seeking power over those that oppose me. Unspeakable crime, murder at midnight. A deal I made, a life I had to take. Someone I loved once held so tight. The screams will follow me, cries of my ancestors and going. My operate, fasting in grain, shape shifting. I feel the animal hide inside me. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same. This form I desire, in innocent blood I will devour. Ancestors gathering round the dwelling, the spirit inhabiting, evil enveloping, the dancing graves in the night, the spirit occupying and transforming, stolen heights, dark practices, my secret life, feathered outers, mysticism, intriguing, my operate, fasting in grain, shape shifting. I feel the animal hide inside me. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same. Give me the ability to hide in plain sight, so no one can see me, not even in the light. I am the crawler, I'm a within, I'm nobody's friend. This initiation is all part of the dark creation. My desires performing incantations. I walk in disguise. If I catch you, it's your demise. Shamanism, my religion, summoning spirits, manifesting myself and changing my flesh. A nightmare to behold. I'ma make you part of the fold. The skin of a man, the soul of a predator. The change is complete. This thing I become, my flesh has succumbed. My operate, fasting in grain, shape shifting. I feel the animal hide inside me. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same.
Entombed for 3,000 years, wrath growing in me. I have lived an eternity, suspended in darkness. Release me. Condemned and bound, the curse. Death is the gift I bring. Revenge in my hands. I feel no remorse. This is the mommy's curse. Release me, release me. Wasting and running. Release me, release me.
All right, folks. Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host. Trying to do 10 things at once here. Your host here. So gold shot back up. Why do people, they keep doubting me? Like somebody messaged me and they were like, gold went back down. Like this one guy. I'm not going to say your name. T. I'll call you T. How about that? Terrence. No, it's not his name.
Mr. T.
Every time gold moves down, he says, you know, he starts
Told you.
ringing the bell that I'm wrong. And I said, dude, another thing.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear about NVIDIA?
Supposedly they're gonna split, but
Yeah, they're supposed to split.
maybe
But that's, what do they say? They're shooting for June.
tentative. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and in the stock market world, that might as well be a million years away. You don't even know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Y'all need to stop acting crazy, man. I'm over here trying to save the planet. Y'all over here messing with me.
I mean, you just can't go wrong with gold, though. Bottom line.
Gold is where it's at. That's just, I'm telling you, man. Years ago, as a prospector, when you tell this story, though,
There used to be gold up in them there heels.
let me do it like this. Even though I have a mustache, I'm going to ask you to suspend reality and pretend like this is it. This is more of a fancy man's mustache. This isn't really
Let's pretend you spend hours waxing and grooming your mustache like a weirdo, like a Raleigh Fingers mustache.
Raleigh Fingers. Haven't heard that name in forever. Picture for the. Oh, it's dual-sided. There we go. They'll be in those hateful groups. Did you see his ugly mustache? Can you believe he wore that? He's so ugly.
Amy Creel, a dandy mustache. It is
You're a
dandy.
plum dandy.
A dapper mustache, see? Man's got to look dapper.
Here we go.
Man's got to look dapper for the ladies, see?
Years ago, when I made my fortune up there on the hills of South Dakota, I'm going to tell you about this story, boys. I came across this spook some time ago. I like to smell my fingers and make sure they're clean. I had so much gold on them. So anyways, I was up there and I was mining. And there was this man bear pig, as one of my listeners so fondly likes to refer to it, came out at me. The Indians call it a yik-yak. You know, they're making up stuff because have you seen some of them old newspaper articles?
Yeah.
I'm not even joking, man. They'll have some stupid, like, it's crazy, man. Like they'll be like, the natives call it a yik-yak. You're like, who said that? That's because you don't understand what the hell they're saying. We tried to give them wampum and brandy, and all they kept saying was yik-yak, yik-yak. They're probably going, ew. That's probably their version of, brother. Brother, what is that? We want gold too. We know it does things. We know that we can turn it into other things like rifles to shoot you. Come on. They always act like the natives were. They might have been savage at times for sure. There's no doubt about that. They weren't the Smurf village, dude. They were violent in hell. But they act like they just didn't know what they didn't know what they were living on. They didn't know where they were around. Oh, they're just superstitious. These big hairy men coming around trying to diddy you. And they didn't have diddy back then, but if they did, that's what they'd be saying.
P. Diddley.
They want to come and diddy you and your wife and take everything and take all your children and eat them and gobble them up. I don't believe in none of it.
I want to diddy your scalp right off of your head.
I don't believe a word of it. Nope, I never do. I never believe those savages. Nope, I never do. Back to the mustache here.
Well, thank God for the white man, or else they would have never known about what a hill or a valley is.
You're lucky. Lucky I done blazed a trail for y'all up there in them gold hills. South Dakota. Black Hills. In fact, I was there when they shot Wild Bill. Old Wild Bill. He was a friend of mine. And then I quit hanging out with him. He hung out with some rough trade, and I became rich. And I said, son, I can't be rolling with you. Very next day, they capped his ass. I mean, they shot him horribly. Killed him horribly. He fell backwards at a weird angle. He looked crazy. He looked like, I don't know, a crumpled up crab. When he gets stepped on by Mario. Hey, Mario! Here's a kind of the mustache of the Mario, right?
It looked like a wilted spider.
He looked like a wilted spider. Speaking of spiders, one of these crazy savages said that's where these big ikiaks came from, was a big giant spider. It impregnated the earth and it just dropped out. And I thought, what a silly fool. And they're like, excuse me, sir, you are the richest prospector in the hills of South Dakota, and I am from the South Dakota Hills Express. Can I get an interview? Of course you can, young man. Tell them all how I'm rich and how everybody's ignorant but me. Okay. The first question is, where are your wife and children? Next question. Well, no, I really need to know that. That's kind of, are you married? Well, I was, but it's a long story. It's complicated. Oh, she left you, eh? No. And if you ask another cylinder question like that, you will be out on the door. The Ikiaks ate them. You're like, wait a minute. Didn't you just say that? Yes, I know what I said, but every now and then the savages are right. Small price to pay for being rich. Wow. But then, it's a dual-edged sword. They're like, well, this interview's over. This man is crazy. The Monopoly guy has totally lost his mind. We were listening to him huff and puff until he said the truth. And once you tell the truth, and everybody's like, oh, forget you, man. And they're getting away from you like you're going to get canceled. They're like, ooh, he's about to be canceled. I don't want to catch it. I don't want to catch his cancel. He's got canceled. Have you heard about him? He's got canceled, guys. When you get canceled, boy, it's no fun. They call you up, the head of the cancelers. They call you up. It's happened to me already. I got prayed canceled.
The cancel council.
The cancel council called me. The American Cancel Society. They called me up, and the guy was like, he's a millennial, a very young millennial. I thought he was a Zoomer, but he's like, hello, sir. Hello. He's very feminine voice, even though he's a male.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Hello. This is Low T talking. Can Low T, what was that again? I said Low T. You know who Low T is? Yes, I do. I've heard of it. It's a horrible condition. No, that's my name, sir. My dad had it, and he named me after it. He was a beta male, the best out there. And my wife settled. My mother settled, and my wife did too. But yeah, so she settled. Where's your mom right now? Don't worry about where my mom is. She's with her boyfriend. Oh, they're separated. No, he's at home sewing. That's what I do too when my wife goes out and runs around on me to find a real man. There's only about 300 of you left, which is why I'm calling. Yeah, I was wondering why you were calling me. What's going on? What's going on? Millennial name kid. They always got these little goof. Trevor. What's going on, Trevor?
Lance.
What's going on? Well, what's going on is that you're being canceled, and I am more than happy to say you need to be. You've said some very incendiary things against the not right side. What are you doing? Well, I was just doing a show. I do a thing. Well, yeah, that thing you're doing got you in big trouble. Ha ha ha. And the ancient ones that are still alive. Oh, they're still alive? Wow. I couldn't believe them. How many of them are there? There's 14 of them. Now, if I could get back to my job, please. Are they vampires still? Yes, they are. I mean, no, they're not. And no, they don't eat children. I didn't even ask you that. Well, you're asking a lot of questions. You're getting me turned around. You know how one-dimensional my brain is? Oh, look, a squirrel.
That's a right-wing lie, sir.
Then you just hear... My wife's like, who is that? It's the council. I think they're canceling me. I'm not sure. He keeps getting distracted. I better keep this conversation very just... He gets back on. What's going on? I was talking to my friend about the new video game that came out. Insert game name here. And the new types of strains of marijuana. Oh, okay. So what's going on, Cancel Kid? Oh, yes, back to that. Yes, the Council of 14 Vampires has decided to cancel you because you keep talking about them. You're also saying things that we don't like how Bigfoot and Dogman will hurt you. I'm like, well, what was your name again? Trevor. Okay, Trevor. Well, that's the truth. They will. There is no proof that Big Man or Dogman or Footman or any of them have ever hurt anyone.
It's been debunked by Snopes, sir.
Snopes has been working hard and diligent for your protection. Well, I have a lot of people who would say otherwise. Those people are all liars. And the Council of 14 Vampires from the networks have said, you're done.
They're right-wing nut jobs.
You are done. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're spreading lies. Vicious lies. Vicious, horrible lies. Hey, everyone, we have the list of every single person that you've corresponded with, all 3,885 of them. And they're all crazy people who voted for that orange man. The orange-skinned gibbon. Well, that's a horrible thing to say about our president. What did you say about our president when he was in office? The truth, that he shit his pants in front of the Pope, and that he fell upstairs, and that he trashed our economy. And then he said, okay, goodbye. Thank you for the drumstick. And it wasn't even like a drumstick. It was just an ice cream.
Give me ice cream.
It was an ice cream cone.
I haven't had my ice cream in
What's wrong with
hours
that guy?
now.
Why would he do that?
I feel like vanilla ice cream. Where am I?
Where are the children so I can sniff their hair?
Do we have child-flavored ice cream? I want.
Joe, please, I'm on the phone. Okay, so I'm trying to talk to them. So is there any way out of this? You could apologize. We could send the magic podium that we send out to people who say things that we don't approve of. And you can take a lot of criticism and everyone will call you crazy. And maybe, just maybe, if you have a ton of money, you'll survive. But probably not. Are you a clone? Of course I'm a clone. I mean, no, I'm not. There's no clones don't exist. Why do you keep trying to turn me around? I'm not trying to do anything. Do you believe in Christ? That fictional comic book character? No, I do not. Of course I don't. You're canceled. Goodbye. Then you hear fumbling around with the phone because he's still not used to using a phone like that. He's used to using a scrying mirror. Shame, shame, shame. What's up, Bigfoot Rob? How you guys doing? So, obviously, I'm a part of organized crime. And we ain't taking it no more. Have you heard about this? These orcas? So somebody posted something today, and I don't have a picture of it. I need to start taking like screenshots. It started a big old fight. And this guy said this thing really existed. And it was an orca, but you know, it was the color of the orca, but it was like it had legs and it had the fin. It was on land. It was like a land orca.
I didn't see that.
I think it was in Paranormal Roundtable. If you go, there's like 10,000 people in there, and they'll argue too, but not nearly as bad as other groups. We regulate it pretty heavily. But dude, yeah. So the orcas are destroying ecosystems, and they're doing it by taking out the apex predator and then inserting themselves, but not really doing their job. They're just kind of like going from spot to spot, and they're wiping out the whites, the great whites. You know, I used to know a white power dude I used to work with, and he's deceased now, and his name was Johnson, and he was huge, big, overweight guy. I'll never forget this guy. And he didn't like me because I was half Mexican. We used to work together. And so our boss thought it'd be cute to put us together sometimes. And there were 3-man teams. And the other 2 guys I worked, they were white guys, but they didn't care. And so we'd switch off as soon as we got out. There were 2 properties right next to each other. And Johnson's like, I'm not letting this Mexican into my truck. And I'm like, I'm only half. I could keep my right leg out if you'd like. And then he wouldn't get in mine. Of course he didn't. He was too fat. He didn't fit. He was just like, you know. And when the woman of truth came, and this has no knock on anybody that he just was a coward, dude. Like, he got his gun taken away from him. Like, what are you? I thought you were a big bad white power guy. But so it's really messed up, man. So he had issues, but here's the thing. You ever heard of the yogurt shop murders?
Yeah.
He was dating one of those girls.
Oh man.
So over the course of us
That's
working together, he told me one day, he was like, that was my girlfriend. And he thought that these guys that had done it were Hispanic, and they possibly were.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I said, can you look at me and see that you see that I'm, you know, what do you see? Do you think that I'm that guy? I mean, you know, doesn't make any sense, dude. I mean, you know, you're looking at me like, but anyway, we were talking about animals one day when he finally kind of loosened up a little bit, you know. And I said, what is your favorite animal? He goes, the great white. And I was like, I think it is, you know, apex predator thing, whatever. I was like, mine's the orca. And he's like, I was like, why do you like the great white? Because it's great and it's white. And I was like, oh, okay.
And it eats brown things.
Makes sense. I said, well, the orca, which is black and white, actually kills and eats it. He's like, you're trying to make this racial. I was like, you just did.
They're sea creatures.
What are you talking about? They don't care about race color. They just want blood. They want to kill and eat and destroy. That's it. But the orca, them and the great whites, they're just predators. They live in the ocean. But they're not, at least we don't know. We don't think they are. They're not inherently evil, right? And there are people that argue that Bigfoot is just this flesh and blood creature, which it does do flesh and blood things, and it does unalive things like a flesh and blood creature would. The problem is that it's not a completely flesh and blood creature, in my opinion, and it does destroy things. So somebody had posted this. They said this thing used to actually roam around. It was an orca wolf-like creature, but I don't think it looked like a killer whale with feet, you know. I think there was an ancestral precedent for it, and it was a bear-like, kind of wolf bear-like, and it was on land, and they spent so much time in the ocean that they began to, through natural selection. I know people call it evolution. If you don't want to call it evolution, don't call it that. I don't care. You can call it whatever you want. Call it bubblish fisheye, adaptation. It's just that word evolution, you know.
Yeah.
And they try to say that we came from monkeys, which I don't buy that. I think we were seeded here. But here's the thing: that particular creature did exist. It really did. And so I didn't get involved. I just let people argue and spin. I was just like, hey guys, come on now. But of course, there was one person in the comment thing, and they're like, source for your data. Like, I tell you what, Tennessee Ridge-Run, thank you for that donation. Everybody who donated so far, thank you so much. It's been a big help. Lori Gibbs gifting the membership. Harpin Blues, Chris, all good people. Thank you, Chris Kramer, everybody. We're trying to reach a certain goal this month, and we're getting closer. We're trying, because we have some things we got to take care of. And so, yeah, really, really appreciate the help, guys. But this creature did have an ancestral precedent, like there was, or the precedent in the fossil records, and people were like arguing about it. But I'm not going to get into it. It just, we don't know what it looked like. I would assume it's probably black or brown, like most predators. That's the color that they usually are. It's easier for them to sneak up on animals like that. Polar bear being the exception, except that the polar bear lives where it's white. It's everywhere it's white. You know? So like if you were 5 black guys and you were jumping a white guy, you would want to be in the dark where they can't see you. You know, that's where you're going to want to fight. If you're 5 white guys and you're jumping a black guy, you're going to want to be in a cloud.
Want that natural camouflage.
That's what Theo Vaughn joke. Theo's like, if you get jumped by 5 black guys, man, it's hard to fight them if it's night. Then he goes, if you were black, he said, if you're white, just close your eyes and imagine fighting. And then he's like, if you were a black guy and you want to imagine getting jumped by 5 white guys, imagine fighting in a cloud. Where does he come up with this crap, dude? Like, this dude is so ridiculous, man.
He's like if you took a dog and turned him into a human.
Yeah.
Like,
and then he was like, I like to help out animals. I love animals. He's like, I just be walking. I'll see a snail, and I'll pick him up and carry him for a few feet, save him a few days travel, Like,
it's like,
who thinks of this crap this guy comes up with? And then people are like, I don't get it. I don't understand why he's funny. I'm like, dude, then you don't have a sense of humor.
it's like a dog being given like a human consciousness and trying to figure out his way throughout the world or something. Trying to figure out the world around them.
Yeah, it's crazy. So Evan Tabaldo, let's look this up. Let's fact check. Do you have sources for your data, sir? Do you have sources? Polar bear hair is actually translucent, not white, from what I hear.
Actually, he said he says I've never personally put a hair under a microscope to look for myself.
But
So
you don't know. Stop lying.
I don't see any peer-reviewed sources.
Actually, Mary King has heard the same thing, so looks like you guys are wrong.
Mary King has heard the same thing. Where did Mary King say this?
She said it right there. I'm going to prove it to you.
I don't see Mary King saying that.
Mary King said it.
She said, even I heard the same thing. Okay, Mary.
I only believe what I can see and prove for myself. I don't believe any of this stuff. I'll believe it when I see it. Seeing is believing. Okay. I don't see any polar bear hair in front of me. I don't see any peer-reviewed sources. I don't see anything. Polar bear hair is white until proven otherwise because the facts and evidence are not pointing in any other direction besides polar bear hair being white. So until I see polar bear hair under a microscope for myself, and I see several peer-reviewed sources, I won't believe your information. This is disinformation from another Trump supporter. This is
the main reason that we don't like the polar bear is because it's white. Inherently part of the racist system that has been set up in place to support white people. And you're like, well, what about light-skinned Hispanics? Anyone with light skin has been part of the oppressive, systemic, racist white system. Okay?
And the Asian people don't get a pass either. They're also part of the white supremacist patriarchy.
And then
according to these calculations, you're a little bitch.
I believe that one.
That's very aggressive language. I don't appreciate your microaggressions.
But you know what? There'll be these shows where a black guy will be up there and he'll be talking facts, and they will call him every name in the book, including these peace-loving supposed neo-hippies. Then all of a sudden, he doesn't go from being an oppressed black man. He goes to being an Uncle Tom, and he needs to be cast out like a demon, especially if he's a well-grounded Christian black man. Then it's time to just bring back segregation. It's unbelievable how ridiculous they are. They are so ridiculous, man. And I look at it like this, dude. I mean, if you can't laugh and joke and make fun of everybody, then what's the point?
Yeah.
You know,
the best is to make fun of yourself.
If you're going to make fun of everybody.
Uh-huh.
Somebody said the Hodge twins crack me up. They're like, look at this dude. Look at
like if someone's
them
like,
savages were just waiting for a moment to talk. This so stupid. I don't even think I'm subscribed to them. I just catch them on the what's it called, TikTok or whatever, I catch them on that the replays or whatever, the little shorts or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll see them talking, and they're just crazy. But I watch a lot of stuff, dude. I watch a lot of weird stuff. Today I was watching this woman, and she was talking about the murders. Now, there are these idiots, because this city is run by idiots, And they want to say that these are not murders, but you're talking about a city who opens the door to illegal immigrants where there is massive, massive crime being hidden. And I know it's there. I could go around with a video camera, and I thought about this too, and just making a whole new YouTube channel and just calling it Austin Crime and just videoing these people committing crime after crime after crime after crime after crime. Not a policeman in sight because they've defunded the police. And the not right side has decided that we don't need police and that we can handle it ourselves, I guess. And, they were too oppressive. So the stupidest thing they could have ever done was just say, hey, we're not going to give the police money to do their job. And that's what they did. And they pretend like the homeless people is not a problem, the homeless population. They pretend like illegal immigration is not a problem. Every night we're answering calls and dealing with illegals, and homeless people are literally 90%. Every now and then you'll get a crackhead, white or black. I mean, we get one or the other. It's rare, but it's usually that typically they're homeless people. It's not just a druggie. Every now and then you'll get a white or black crackhead that has a house, and they're selling baked goods to pay for the mortgage or whatever. But there is crime, and it is so bad, and so many. And there's some places that it's just nuts. I would never put a female guard there, or a smaller guard. It could, because you would be in so much trouble. And then you would start rethinking your position and your life choices. I could tell you that. You'd be like, damn, dude, oh boy, maybe I should have voted for the orange guy. Only because, if nothing else, just so I could stay alive. My dad was a staunch demo, whatever you want to call them, the commie-crats. He was a staunch one until he started going on vacation under the Biden administration.
The Bidet administration.
And he started telling me, he's like, I feel less and less comfortable out there, And I was like, I bet you do. Being an elderly at this point now, even though he's well put together and he doesn't look his age at all, but he's elderly, and so is his wife, and they're out there on vacation by themselves. It's like, you better be real careful.
So letting millions of people come here unchecked didn't turn out well, did it?
And now they've managed to stop the deportation of the criminal element. So now they're going to be able to go after is the low hanging fruit of the ones that are newly arrived. But the ones that are embedded and locked in, like these gangs and stuff, they're going to be here because the Democong has managed to, the Viet Cong, Democong, the Democong has managed to do what they've managed to do. And I had somebody ask me a question the other day too. They're like, well, aren't you afraid you're going to lose half your audience? No, F no. You know why? Because half of the country doesn't agree with it. Maybe 20-30% does. So I would be losing them, right? And I don't care about that. There are a few good ones on that side. I have some colleagues that are, I have a few colleagues that are, on that swing that way, whatever, on that team. And they've been very disappointing as of late. The things that they do and say is just unabashedly reported, that like posting. Well, I mean, let's just say it, not truths. And they do it every day. And they'll take something that the mainstream media says and they'll blow it up. You didn't see them doing all that whenever Biden was in there, and now they're doing it. So it is what it is. And so this side has pretty much the people that think like we do. They're pretty much on this side. Very much a very strong. The other side has like more of like witches, women that are into being into witchcraft and use dark witchcraft.
Yeah,
they're on that team.
in San Antonio.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. We saw that. They're
was not comfortable.
None of those people, but maybe the exception of 2 or 3, started listening to my show.
Yeah.
And so this guy tells me, yeah, you need to stop, or you're going to be blah blah blah. I'm going to be what? Get the call from some Zoomer, millennial, whatever, that I'm canceled? Who cares? Who cares? And even if the people who are talking about wanting to do a deal with me, whatever, and they will pull out, I don't care. I do not care. It's not going to stop the inevitable. What's going to happen? And I'm going to promise you, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Folks, we've said this before. How many times have we predicted things and they came true? You know, they can just call me their daddy at this point. Call me Wolf Daddy. Wolf Daddy is always right. Oh, I hate him. I hate that guy. Yeah.
Wolf Daddy
He
Kane.
sends me to his room. Big Wolfie Kane. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. We're going to win. We're going to win big. Write it down. Didn't I say 5 years? I said 5 years, dude. That's all it's going to take. And we're going to have a fan base unmatched. Because you know why these other channels that have these big, huge fan bases and they can't get with us? Is because one of our people is worth 100 of theirs. Because they're casual listeners. This here is something unique. Because you found the truth. And here it is right here. And I serve it up every other day. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, 4 days. And then you got the podcast on Tuesday. So you're getting 5 days a week of truth. And I'm going to keep kicking them in the teeth and kicking them in the face as hard as I can until they pull out their cancel. So they decide that they just don't like me. Because nobody's going to be able to cough up 50, 60, 70 witnesses like I can like that. Nobody's going to be able to do what I do. I promise you that. And do what we're doing. Because I couldn't do it alone. I needed them and I needed you. But you guys got my back. You've got my back and you've had my back. And y'all are some solid paratroopers, man. I'm telling you. I'll put you up against anybody. If we go to war, we go to war. If we're at peace, we're at peace. We have a great time. It doesn't matter what the enemy throws at us, whether it's people, demonic, it could be cryptids, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're going to win. And when I talk to people, and in a couple of weeks, the interview we did last night is going to come out. A woman had a horrific Dogman encounter.
Yeah,
we interviewed her.
Pretty bad.
She was willing to come on and talk about it. And that shows you these creatures are not your friend. These creatures are frontline vanguard of something bigger. This is a demonic, disembodied Nephilim, like Brother Abe Sears is saying. And I'll say this too, Jerry Williams. He wrote a book about it.
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot and the spiritual Bigfoot and the, what is it called? The
spiritual Bigfoot.
Spiritual Bigfoot and the
no. Predator Bigfoot.
Predator
and the
Bigfoot and the
Warrior's
spiritual
Path.
warrior's path. Sorry, I'm so turned around. He wrote a book about it. Go check it out. And today I saw there was a thread going on, and I was like, "Look, dude, no." I said I just had to put my 2 cents in. They were arguing with somebody who's talking about, "Oh, this wasn't the work of Bigfoot." And I invited that guy too. I said, "You want to come on the show and tell me about it? I'm not going to ridicule him. Tell me why you think this is." And he's having communication with them. But I'll tell you what I know. You're communicating with a demonic entity. That's what you're doing. And you don't realize it. And they're in a body. But that doesn't make it a physical dude. It can do physical things. And this guy's sheep had been wiped out by it. Let me tell you something. That's what they do. That's what they do. But I'm going to tell you something else. Pray and plead the blood of Jesus over everything you have, including your animals. And how many people, we talked about it last night. It's a recording we did. It won't be out for 2 or 3 weeks. But we talked about it last night. How many people? It was about 6 or 7 that have unalived the Dogman.
Yeah.
And at least we counted after the show. Me and Anthony were actually 9 people that we know personally who've unalived the Dogman. Or I'm sorry, it's backwards. 7 Dogman, 8, 9 Bigfoot, that they've actually done this. And every freaking time someone, whatever, comes and grabs these specimens and confiscates their weapons and does this and does that. That's why you don't announce it even, because you're going to be laughed at, ridiculed. Nobody's going to believe you. Nobody's going to see you. They're going to confiscate everything. You take a picture of it, they're going to take it from you. If you whatever gun you use, they're going to take it from you. I'm not telling you to go out and just slaughter some random animal. These aren't animals, and they're not your friends. Did you see the picture from that game cam from Georgia? Have you seen that? You guys
the close up one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Horrific creature.
It's just like ugly as
That's
hell,
how they
dude.
look, dude. There's a reason why they look like that. If that was just a wild hairy man out there, do you think it would look like that? It doesn't look like that. If it's a normal guy,
That thing was ready for its close up.
they're gross, dude. I'm telling you. And now there are some that are more ape-like than man-like, and vice versa. But it doesn't matter. They're all the way they are. Yes, I have heard of the crawler being shot. I've heard of it being killed also by Dogman, and that doesn't make Dogman a hero. That just means Dogman, they kill each other like lions and leopards kill each other. They're predators. Predators
Territorial.
to the max, dude. Lori Gibbs says, hope I win something. Lori, guess what? Have you won before? Let me know. If you haven't won before, then you just won right now. I'll make you the first winner of the night. How about that? Exactly, Melissa. Feeding them is like giving them offerings, like appeasing a god,
Like
not
tribute.
the god. That is paying tribute to them. And that's where we're going to start right there. Thank you for saying that. Where do these things come from? We're going to talk about that too tonight. We're going to get on it because we're going to do, okay, Laura, you won. And I'll put the banner down at the bottom so you can see, folks. This is the giveaways at prtpodcast.com. If you don't send it to that email address, you might not get it sent to you. So send it to that email address, folks, right there. So I'm going to tell you this. When I was on Clyde Lewis's show, we were talking about the way that they sprawl out. He was talking about hearing that recently, how they
flatten and skitter across the
they
ground.
move like spiders.
Mm-hmm.
Something that Jerry Williams has been talking about for him and Ella. For a long time. I've been hearing it. I was hearing it back in the days when I was on another show. And maybe they didn't want to hear that, these people that are just like, oh well, you don't want to hear it. Sorry, that's what they're doing. So we'll start with this one. This guy had a ranch out near Marfa. And actually this is weird. Like, this is kind of cool. It would be his great grandson listens to our show. His name's Julio, and shout out to him. He's a young guy. He's 20 years old, or I think he said he was about to have a birthday, so I don't know if he's going to be 20 or if he's going to be 21, but anyway, happy birthday to you coming up, and congratulations, kiddo. You made it to your 20s. And I'm not trying to be condescending, patronizing. You're a kid. To me, you're a kid. I'm 49 years old. But I'm going to tell you this. His great-grandfather, had a menagerie of animals. And we were talking about it one day. And it was like maybe 3 or 4 days later, this guy messages me and says, hey, my grandfather used to live out here in Marfa, adjacent to Big Bend, years ago. He had a farm or a ranch out there. And he also knew that road to Candelaria, which I thought was really cool because I used to travel that road with my outlaw grandpa. First time I ever shot a 38, I was just shooting it out and there's like this big, we're going around the side of this big mountain, and then there's this like cliff that just on the other, down there on the, only time my grandpa wouldn't let me ride in the back. He's like, hell no, you bounce, you'll fall, 1,000 feet to your death.
Just for a second, can we pause it?
So my grandfather used to talk about seeing these weird coyotes that would walk around on their hind legs, and there was all this weird stuff up there in those hills. And my grandfather, they lived in Louisiana at one time. He was a truck driver, so he lived all over the place. And so he told me some wild stories, some wild tales. My grandmother too. And then years later, there was a DJ named DJ Cosmic, and he actually gave me his story that happened to him and his girlfriend when they lived in Marfa years ago, or well over 20 years ago. Shoot, probably 25 now. But I've told that story. It was a Halloween story that I told, Halloween party they were having. And we can get into that one too, if you want to. But this one, I remember. I told Julio, I said, I remember your great grandfather. I remember him. He had a coyote as a pet. And he said, yes. I said, I remember. My grandfather was friends with that guy. And they would be about the same age. So his great grandfather's like, he's not around anymore, but he died at the age of 91 or 92, I think he said. And so my grandfather would be about that age. Yeah, he'd be, pretty up there. But my grandfather he'd be over 100 now. So his grandfather was about my grandpa's age. He died, some time ago, but not a long time ago. He outlived my grandfather by almost 20 years. My grandfather had some health problems from diabetes. And I told him, I said, I remember going out there. It was in the middle of nowhere. And this guy had a wolf. And he kept it in a cage. It was a she-wolf. She wasn't tame. But with him, yeah. But he had a coyote that was a pet. Yeah, it was pretty funny. And it's the only coyote I've ever seen that was worth a crap. And he had a bunch of other, animals and stuff. He had a badger.
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't know how this guy caught him. But now I think I do. Julio said that his grandfather would go around different places and capture these animals. They would often be caught while they were being pursued by bigger, larger predators. And he said that was one way. Whenever there was activity of one of these creatures in the area, he caught one near Balmaria. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. It's a hot springs place. Really cool. And he said that he had gone out there, and one of these creatures, this was a red wolf, a female. And she was being pursued by a larger creature, a larger predator, if you will. His grandfather did not know, Manuel, his name was Manuel, he did not know what this was. And so, being that he was, older, he had not encountered something like this. He sees this very large dog-like creature running across these people's ranch, and it is in hot pursuit of this smaller creature. And we're not talking like the difference between a dire wolf and a wolf. We're talking about the difference between what looked like a buffalo and a wolf. But this buffalo had long limbs and a gigantic head, and it looked very lupine, like very wolf-like. And Julio writes, he says, I'll send you, we talked very briefly.
Mhm.
And then he said, because he's actually living in Mexico, but he said, I'll write you the encounter, because it's, long distance from there. Actually, believe it or not, you get charged for that. And he says, I'll write it to you. And he gets very bad reception there anyway. We wouldn't be able to talk. He lives up in those Chinati Mountains on the other side. And so he said, he goes, this thing was in hot pursuit. He said, and my grandfather, and this was a very young, I was like 8 or 9, and his grandfather was, and this wolf was already pretty old. She was already like 12 years old, and he rescued it as a baby. So it was older than me. She was older than me.
Yeah.
And it was a red wolf. There's not a lot of those around. I saw it. I got to actually, she let me pet her, you could tell, with him. And then I was kind of like, I better not, because this thing don't know me that well. So I just kind of, my personal feelings, I better, I don't think it was too kid friendly, but I was usually pretty good with animals, even though there would be animals that wouldn't like other kids and they would love me. Like some of my friends would have little brothers or sisters, and their pets would not like them. And they wouldn't take to strangers, and 100% would always love me. I've always been really good with animals, really good with animals. In fact, you guys remember when we went to SeaWorld and the dolphins?
Yeah.
You remember that? Folks, I'm not bragging, but when I went up to the water with the dolphins, they all came to me.
Mm-hmm.
They did. Am I lying?
No, that's cool.
Yeah. They ran away from Tony. They were
That's a
just
lie.
like-
Animals love me.
Tony and Adrian, they were just like they tried to bite them. They tried to
They tried to take me with
tried to
them
assault
because they
them.
love me so much.
they actually shot at them.
One of them proposed.
One of
to
them
me.
even tried to like.
One of them wanted me to
abduct
meet their
because he's in
father.
MS-13.
He was trying to
like, you know
introduce
what?
me to their dad, and
You
I'm
know
like,
what?
I'm not
You
like
look-
that, man.
You know what they told me? They said you look really disheveled and unsavory.
He was like, my
Well, they were afraid
mom
Tony
would
was
love
going to
you.
eat them. That's why
Exactly. They were like you.
This
they're
is
used
just
to
jealousy.
You look
who
like
look
you
like
turned
him.
into
knows.
sushi.
No matter where I
Cutting them up
go,
and eating them raw.
I'm like Snow White.
They eat
I,
everything
bet I
that
look better
moves.
than the Snow White in the Disney
Oh my
film.
god, this is ridiculous. Well, that's probably true. But you know, so these dolphins actually came up and they were around me, and I was like very gracious about it. There were all these little kids with their parents, and I was like, ha, ha, loser, a loser, loser. Oh, you're all losers. You're all losers. And you know what? In Trump voice, if we were in the Easter egg hunt, I would win all the eggs. You would all not find an egg. You would lose. All the dolphins love me. These dolphins, East dolphins from the Atlantic, the West dolphins from the Pacific, and in Miami, the Miami Dolphins even, they love me. They all love me. They voted for me. And all of you little losers, you didn't find any Easter eggs. I found them all. Look, they're in my pockets, and I began to eat them. The
You're all-
Cadbury cream eggs, and I gave them to the dolphins. We had a great time.
You're all a bunch of 8-year-old losers.
You're all a bunch of little 11-year-old pieces of poop. You know that's what you are. POPs, pieces of poop. Stop calling yourselves kids and start calling yourselves pops. That's what you are. You can't vote. I don't care. I'll be gone out of office by the time. I don't need your vote. I'm good.
Great dolphins.
The dolphins love me.
Never
So I
had
was
any
there
better
and I was like
dolphins.
petting the what?
We've never had better dolphins.
We've never had better dolphins. So they did though. They did. When we did the dolphin petting thing, they did. There was like 8 of them. I'm not even joking. And I was like, behold the dolphin whisperer. No, I'm just kidding. I wasn't that arrogant about it. I was pretty arrogant though. There was a kid that was crying next to me, and I was like, hurts, doesn't it? Yeah, that's what you get. You just, you've been bad. You didn't do your schoolwork. Talk back to your mom and dad. Look what happens. The dolphins hate you now. It's horrible. No, I would never do that to children.
Tear off the dolphins, tear off the whales.
But the dolphins were around me, and and also too babies. Anthony, Tony, you can. This is true. Like if somebody's holding a baby and I come up, they don't cry. Like they'll do this.
Yeah.
They try to come to me.
You're
you
better
know?
with babies. I think Anthony's better with like infants. Like
What's the difference between an
I mean,
infant and a
not-
baby?
a little
What
bit
are you talking
older,
about?
just a little bit older when they can walk, about like
Tony's
2 or
better.
3.
Oh yeah, when they start getting older, until they get old enough to make
I do pretty good about
I'm good.
6
I don't
to 10.
like they're annoying. I'm like, oh kid, you bother me. That's that age where it's easy though. You can pay them in comic books or whatever,
you can just
Yu-Gi-Oh
bribe 'em to
cards,
shut up
and
and
give
leave
them
you alone.
action figures and then leave. You're like, oh, Merry Christmas, here's your stuff, take off. And they get a little older and they start getting picky like your brothers.
Yeah.
Like, I want Champion. And I'm like, that was garbage when I was growing up. Nobody wore Champion. You couldn't convince them.
Yeah, that was a poor man's like
That was
Walmart
garbage. It was
brand.
from Walmart.
It's for poor kids, dude.
So I go over there to get your brother a Champion hoodie, and it was $40. I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah, like, dude, we used to buy these for like $5
$5,
at
$10
Walmart,
at
and then
Walmart,
we'd be
and you're over there-
embarrassed to wear them because everyone knew you were wearing Walmart.
Nobody
clothes.
wanted that crap. These kids, that's like this land over here in Cedar Park.
That's how
Full of
everything is.
werewolves and
It's those
cedar
Echo.
trees.
Remember those Echo Rhino shirts?
Oh yeah, the Mark
Oh,
Echo.
yeah.
Back in the
God.
day, it was so famous, and everyone
I
wore
always
them.
hated those.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's
back to
cool.
the story. So what happens is this guy, he's got this little system, of catching these animals. He had a bunch of them. I
Mhm.
remember he had a bunch of them. He had deer. He had all kinds of stuff, and he had a buffalo, which was crazy. So when I was reading this, I was thinking this is maybe how he found that buffalo. But then when I started reading the part about how the legs were long and it had a wolf head, I was like, oh, okay. There wasn't a buffalo chasing this wolf. This was because I was kind of confused for a minute there, and then I started reading further. So what ended up happening, this guy, he shoots this thing, and this thing just kind of, then he shoots it again and again and again. He had one of those repeaters, A lot of ranchers do. We have them.
Mhm.
They're very nice. And you can fire some pretty heavy slugs in that thing to take out predators. And this thing just kind of turned and looked at him, and then it stopped, and it was like touching its face and its neck. And he's like, I'm not going to say what he said, but he was like, oh, you know, like in Spanish, it's a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, what the hell is that? And so his uncle kind of stops, and Manuel was like, he was with his brother. I don't know his brother's name, but he said, dude, this thing right here is not a normal creature. Now, there were Apaches and Yatkes in that area. And there were always rumors of shapeshifters and things like that. But in all of his years, he had never seen one. Now, if you figure how many years ago, this was like, 42 years ago, right? So he was like in his 50s, at that time. And he was no young guy. And his brother was several years younger than him. And he was like in his late 40s or whatever. But he was like, we're not going to get up and outrun this thing, because this thing turned and started running toward them. And it was running pretty fast and kind of ape-like. But then it got up on its hind legs and began running toward them. He had a trap that he had set up on this property. And this thing, it charged them. And the wolf got up, took off, ran, whatever. And he had this trap. Like I said, there were several traps, but one in particular that this thing, the she-wolf ended up going into that night.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks it's because that creature, whatever this was, because they got on they were on horses. They got on the horses, got off that ridge, and they took off and they rode away. And this thing didn't catch them. It didn't run like abnormally fast, according to what I was told by Julio. But this creature tore part of that trap up. And he had a couple javelinas too, and he got them in the same area. And he thinks that he believed that some of these animals he was catching were actually being stalked and chased by this predator. And there were people on the adjacent ranch who claimed that they would see this creature, and what it would do is grab their hogs, their tame hogs, or their cattle, and it would run off with them, and then they would find it up in a tree with no blood. So vampiric, absolutely, and partially eaten, just like the internal organs and things like that would be eaten, and all the blood would be gone. And so they reported this to the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department is like, well, what do you want us to do about it? Tell the game warden. The game warden's like, what do you want me to do about it? This sounds like the work of a man. You said it stood up on its hind legs. So how do you get somebody to help you? That seems to be a problem. You can't. It's an issue, So it's really weird. Like, how do you make people pay attention to you and say, look, man, I am being plagued by a monster, and you're supposed to get somebody to help you, and these creatures do what they do, and nobody's really wanting to be involved because that's not their department. And then eventually he talked to a former tribal police officer who came down from Wyoming, from the Wind River Reservation, and actually helped him through the network that he went to Fort Stockton. And there was a Comanche there that told him, hey, I got some friends that work for the Indian Bureau and they can help you. And they brought a guy down who was a tracker. And he told him, he said, what you're dealing with is a shapeshifter that's been stuck. Crazy, wild stuff. But you remember when we had Trey on, my cousin, who dated a woman that was a Shoshone, and that he stayed there at Wind River. And he told some wild tales about the clown that they would see, that clown, skinwalkers, all kinds of creepy stuff. And he was immersed in that world for like 4 years. And this tracker comes down with a friend of his who's not an official, whatever. This guy's he's a retired officer back then. It was years ago. And he tells him, he's like, this is, bad medicine, brother. This is something that's not It's not your world. He goes, it's not the white man's world. He goes, not even my world. He goes, this is a different tribe. And he said, this thing probably has half of its mind. Now think about that. That really struck me. And up to that point, I had only had one little brief conversation with this guy. And I said, what? I said, is there anything that you typed on here that you could tell me easier? You could maybe tell me. So he gave me the phone number of his great uncle's son, which would be, I guess, his cousin, his dad's first cousin, which would be his second cousin, but he, for some reason, called it his great uncle's son. And so I got in touch with this guy, Roberto, and I asked him about it. And he was older, quite a bit older, and he remembers this way more clearly than Julio did. And he says, yeah, I can tell you. And he lives on this side, you know. And he said, look, I'm going to tell you this. He goes, my family had been in this area for generations. In the third generation, he goes, my great uncle and his brother, Julio's grandfather, their generation, they were here. They were in this area. He goes, we're part Yaqui. But this guy that was doing this, he called him a guy. He didn't say an animal. He called him a man. He said this man that was doing this was absolutely an Apache, but he didn't know what kind. Now, if you look in that area, there's different kinds, you know, Lapan possibly, or even an offshoot of the Mescalera, but I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate because I'm not 100% sure that it wasn't a Yaqui either. Yaquis lived kind of in that borderland between, and I'm actually talking to one right now, and I'm going to try and get him to come on the show. I think he will. I just got to make time to do it. But it's that borderland between Mexico and the United States that, you know, kind of goes back and forth. The Rio Grande Valley area, but not the valley area. I'm sorry, the western, going like from Del Rio further west into New Mexico. And he said that these natives down there, they are very spiritual, and they do all kinds of stuff. And so his grandfather would have been his dad's and Julio's grandfather's dad was very close with these people at one time and would trade with them. And he would even go to the Comanche outpost and trade with them over in Fort Stockton. He said, but he's like, he always made, you know, they understood that they're not the same people. You know, he was Yaqui and Hispanic, and these people were not. They were different. And they were, although they were friendly, he said that they could be very nasty and mean if they didn't know you that well. And so one of the problems he had was that if you angered someone or messed with someone, he goes, you could get a curse done on you real fast. And there was this medicine man that was a healer. The problem was, though, that this guy, he didn't believe in Christ, and he didn't use Christianity in any way, shape, or form. He only believed, and this is the conclusion I came to, he only believed in the old ways. And he got into it with what would be considered a medicine man gone bad, a warlock, a skinwalker.
Mm-hmm.
And he cursed that guy. And the guy he always lived alone, but people would go to him for healing. And the guy began to reject people. And in fact, he would come out and throw rocks and chase them. And he acted very much like this demoniac that you hear about in the Bible that Jesus healed. He became crazy. He had long hair. He started to pull it out. And then they would hear him up on this ridge dancing around at night and screaming and hooping and hollering and stuff. And one night, he just disappeared. And no one saw him again, except there was this predation that began on people's farms and ranches. And they attributed it to some sort of creature that was coming at night and taking their animals. And like I said, they would find them up in a tree. When Julio's grandfather, Manuel, had gone to that area to investigate this and to try to capture this wolf. He found a red wolf being pursued by a very large wolf-like creature. So when he gets back to the ranch, and he's with one of the vaqueros there, I don't know his name, but him and his brother, they were like, look, this is not the same brother. This is not Roberto's brother. This was his younger brother. Roberto's father was a year older than this guy, the one that did this, than Manuel. And he said, dude, he's like, when he got back to the main ranch with his younger brother, he told them, he says, look, I saw a wolf. And they're like, yeah. And he goes, but I saw something else chasing that wolf. What am I supposed to be catching here? And they told him, they said, well, you collect animals, right? He says, yeah, but this is not an animal. I don't know what that is. It began to run really fast on its hind legs. At that point, there is Tracker 1 says, looks like duty calls again. I'll catch you the replay. Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk tomorrow on Tracker 1. He says, at that point, this thing began to do something that these people had no idea, they were not prepared for. It went on like this killing spree. And it killed, they were finding exsanguinated animals of all kinds, wild animals, javelinas, a lot of javelinas there, to the point where the game wardens and even the rangers at Big Bend started going, hey, putting out notices. People need to be careful. You need to be aware, this is dangerous. This was back in the 80s, like I said, I was a kid. This was before the 80s. This was the late 70s. And he said, dude, it was very dangerous. And so for a couple of years there, the rangers, everybody was armed. They were heavily armed. Everybody was, and it wasn't comfortable. They were like, there were people like saying, hey, I went out to the park, the national state park or national park, whatever. I took my animal, tied it up to the trailer, and I went inside and I came back out and it was gone. People were losing their pets on a massive scale. People were losing livestock, cattle, everything. And finally, a woman, a very brave woman, she went outside one day. And like a lot of people in that area, she was half Native and half Mexican. And she went outside with her clothes hanging on the line, and she saw this creature. The way that it was described to me by Roberto was that it was like hairless in the midsection, but it had hair on its wrists and its ankles, and then around its privates, and then it had it by its underarms, kind of like a man, but in weird places too. Like it was weird around the neck, and it had this wolf-like head that was hairless, and you could almost like the skin looked white on the face, like you could see it was like skin. And he goes, this thing had huge black eyes. He's like, and it was grabbing someone's goat, lifting it up with its really long limbs. And when it turned around, it let out this shriek that sounded like a horse being unalived, mixed with a dog or wolf growl, howl. And it dropped the goat and ran around in like a circle, and then charged at this woman. And she had ran back up to the house and grabbed a shotgun and pumped both barrels point blank right to it as it ran up onto the house. It turned with its part of its neck blown out and then took off into the woods. It was moving at an extremely fast rate. And then after that, the predation stopped. They don't know what happened to this creature, but it all just came to an end. And she reported that there were wounds on this creature, you know, that she could see it, and they were bleeding, they were dripping, and there was this white pus mixed with what looked like blood. It was like blood and milk or something coming out of it. Not the black goo. There's no report of that.
Mhm.
So I don't know. But this thing disappeared, and my guess was that if I had to put two and two together, this is what I think it was, and this is what I think happened. I think that was that medicine man. He had the curse thrown on him, and I believe he didn't have the protection that we have of Christ. He didn't have the Christ shield, right? And he was doing good, but he didn't have that protection, and he was unalived ultimately by this woman, and he went out of his mind. And he ultimately went into the woods somewhere and probably just died out into the middle of nowhere. It looked like it was some sort of in-between creature. Now, the evil medicine man that did this, 2 days after that incident, he was found unalived. He lived in Mexico on the other side by Candelaria. Someone went in and caught him and unalived him. Now, according to the people that lived in that area, according to Roberto, and I've been in that area a lot when I was a kid, you know, and I had heard a little bit about these stories. I had heard that there were medicine men in those hills, and that they would take children and use them in ceremonies and stuff. I was scared, you know. Didn't stop me from climbing up the cliff and going up into the forbidden cemetery and running around looking for coyote men.
Of course not.
Because I didn't believe in it. I didn't believe in it until I saw the Dogman. Then I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't run into these things, you know? Holy crap, what a stupid little fucker. You don't realize how stupid you are. You're stupid.
Yeah, your childhood is just thinking about.
I mean, you're dumb, just like those kids at SeaWorld that didn't get to pet the dolphins because they're stupid. The dolphins love me.
Reminiscing on your childhood, just thinking all the ways you should have died but didn't.
Oh, dude. There was one particular with a ramp and a bike. That's all I'm going to say. I felt like it crushed my insides. And my friends were like, well, they didn't even like go, oh, are you okay? They're like, oh, okay. And they just said, we just need to adjust the ramp a little bit and change it. And
What is up with kids and ramps? I did the same thing over a river or a creek or something.
Yeah. Nobody cared. They were just like, we need to tweak it because it was over this big creek. Yeah.
Get your body out of the way. We're going to use it for the ramp.
And it had just rained a couple days before, so the creek was not flowing fast, but it was just glorified mud pit back there.
Exactly.
So I was like I was the first kid, Kelly, he got over it and kind of hit and then jumped off of his bike. I said, well, I could do that. I'm more of an athletic than he is, you know? And no, my bike went like this, boom. And I had the cheap bike. I didn't have the Huffy or the BMX.
Yeah.
And I had the Walmart special, went into my stomach and I flipped over, vomited up everything. Right behind my house, we had tons of woods right behind my house, just woods back there, just solid woods. And I was always in those woods, always. We called it the trails. I was always in those trails. That's where I was at. And so, good thing I didn't get unalived, man.
Kids and creeks.
Look at Scorpion talking. What are you talking, boy? Be quiet. Running into the woods when you realize your mom was right, you were up in Shut up, man. He didn't even he put Pindy Joe. I'm a Pindy Joe? Thank you for calling me a Pindy Joe. I don't know what a Pindy Joe is, but thank you for calling me that. Do I get an award for being a Pindy Joe? Because this guy's calling me a Pindy Joe, folks. I would be offended if I didn't give a shit. But I don't. So, but what ended up happening? This story was compelling, and I was reading it, and I talked to Roberto. Roberto just says, "Look, man, what do you say? I'm just off of what you SSID, brother. What?
First off, take your caps off, Squirt.
What is he talking about?
He's trying his best to speak.
He's going through a speaking spell. Finally, he's learning how to use a keyboard, guys. It's been years.
Congratulations, PRT. Let's all clap for this historic moment.
Yeah, he can actually use a keyboard. He's going to Hawaii. Yeah.
I think he's been going to school. His spelling's getting better.
Gotten better. So this guy, he disappears, and then the predation stops. And so that is the story behind that red wolf. She got caught in the pen that night, and of course, this is before he was shot by this woman. They said the woman that ended him was like 5 foot nothing. She was just a woman who had courage and got him, nailed him. But the tragedy was that he wasn't necessarily an evil guy, but he didn't have the protection, and he succumbed to the change.
Mm-hmm.
This demonic guy that actually had this happen to, the dude that did it ended up being unalived. Somebody did him in. The rumor was, get this, he was killed by a female too. The daughter of this demoniac, the guy who was possessed of this demon or whatever that turned him into this hideous creature. She actually was a churchgoer. She was a believer in Christ, and she was always trying to get her dad to come and be a whatever. She swore up and down that she didn't do it until 2 days before she died. She stood up. She walked to the kitchen. This is what they say in Candelaria. And she says to her, at this point, grandchildren and her daughter who was still alive. And she says, I killed the man who cursed my father. And they said, how? They said, I wasn't going to do it, but I walked in. She's like, and he began to convulse. This is what Roberto, he sent me to another guy who was, well, he didn't send it to me, but he was there talking and I could hear them. They were, I guess they were kind of like in a bar or something.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear music in the background. So they went outside and they were both talking to me. And didn't sound like a real happening place, but there was some piano music going on. It's like the land that time forgot over there. And I asked him questions about it. I was like, is it still this, and that? And he said, yeah. So I do plan on going there and taking a trip there. I want to take you guys and Nellie to the observatory and to retrace the steps of some of these encounters.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
The cemetery where Cosmic saw was not his real name, but where he saw his Dogman thing and whatever. So I want to go do this. But we have to make time, and time is money, and we have to get things together to make it happen. But I want to do this. And these people, I would like to talk to some of them, but some of them are across the border. I don't know how comfortable I feel about that at this point. But they might be willing, because there's nobody that really stops them from going from Candelaria into Marfa now. So they just go through those canyons, and those canyons are steep and they're scary. But he said that he was this woman. She had said, and he's like, this is her nephew. So I talked to this older guy, and he says, yeah, this all went down years ago, late 70s. And he said that I guess it would have been, I think, mid 70s. Really, I wasn't even born yet. So let's see, if I was 8. It would have been 4. Shoot, this would have been early 70s. This would have been the early. Man, I'm old. Jeez Louise. Don't get old, folks. I don't recommend it. But I'm not old, but I'm older, and sometimes I feel like I'm just young and sprightly, and I'm like, wow, I'm 50. I will be.
And you're almost 50.
Yeah, and so this situation happened in the early 70s, but this woman, it was a different time then, and nobody looked into it or cared. They were just like, he was an evil bastard and he got taken. And it was years later when she was on her deathbed. Years later, like I think it was like 2002 or something. Like it was a long time. She was a young girl when she did it. And she did it because, it was whatever. I mean, well, young girl. I mean, she was probably in her 30s, I think they said. But if you stop and you look at this situation, she was dying. She knew she was going to die. And she says, I'll be dead in a couple of days. She's like, and she had the vision, right? And she had cancer, unfortunately. She had gotten cancer.
But she lived a lot longer than she should have. She was supposed to have died really quickly, but then she lived like several more years. And then one day she just got up and said, hey, I'm not going to be around much longer. And she's like, the man that took my father's life, I unalived him. When I went into his hut, which is what he lived in, she's like, I didn't see a man. I saw a demon. His skin was bubbling. And his arms and legs were like elongating. And he looked up at her and he called her the B word and was like, he goes, you die tonight. And she's like, you first. Basically, she said, yeah, you go to hell. And that was his last words. And she took him out. And then 2 days later, she was gone. And she said that she had told God, I'm sorry I did this, whatever, but he was a demon. He was a man who could change into something not human, something evil. Now, from this same family, switching gears here, that wasn't the only creature he got through supernatural means. He actually got a couple of other animals that were not native to that area. And one of them was not that it wasn't native, but it was like, and I remember as a kid, he had a cougar. And one of these cougars he found being chased by something large and hairy up on a ridge. And it was a female too. And he had found a full-grown male cougar that obviously was twisted. And he couldn't believe it. And it had its back broken. So this guy sort of became a pseudo cryptid wrangler. Like, he had actually began to know how to deal with Bigfoot and Dogman or whatever. I asked these gentlemen and I asked Julio and I was like, did this guy ever make a distinction between the different types of wolf type creatures? And he did. He actually did. And this is very good information. They told me that there was a name for those little coyote men. It wasn't anything fancy or whatever. But they just called them little men, like little men, like monitos. But they would call them like monitos de coyote, like little men, coyote men, whatever. And it was just, but then it just got shortened to monito. So anything out there running around, they knew it was one of those little things that would stand up on their hind legs and run. What he saw, Roberto, what he saw himself when he was a child. He said, I was 13 years old. He said, and I was out there and I was hunting. He's like, we were quail hunting. And he goes, we were on these people's land down in South Texas. He goes, and I saw those creatures. They looked like little dwarf-like creatures. He's like, and they would lay flat on their stomachs. He goes, I watched them do it. There were 3 of them. They were brown-skinned, and they looked like little duendes. He goes, and they took off their shirts and their little pants, and he's like, and they laid flat on their stomachs, and they rolled, and they popped up, and they looked like coyotes. He's like, I watched them. I saw them change before my eyes when I was 13. He goes, and I got so scared. He's like, and my uncle was like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. He goes, if you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. And they, as coyotes, came walking up to where he was at in this little stand, and then they took off. And this little stand was not a stand. It was like a shack where they kept weapons and stuff. And they went and they got their guns, and he said, let's go. And they took off. Went back into the pickup, and these coyotes, there were 3 of them, and they were roaming around. He said, we drove by. I was in the back of the truck with my 2 cousins, and we looked down, and we're headed to this spot where there was a bunch of these birds that we were hunting. He's like, we looked down, and we see their little clothes. You could see them laying on the ground. They were folded. He's like, I saw that with my own eyes. He goes, now, I haven't seen anything else like that ever in my life. He goes, but I've seen the crying lady. And I thought that was interesting. And I was like, well, what do you have for us on that? And he said, one time when I was a kid, he's like, I was being chased by the federales. And he goes, I didn't do anything wrong, but they just wanted to kill me. When he says that, I hear laughter coming from his friend. I go, why's your friend laughing? What's up with that?
Yeah.
And his friend goes, ay, pendejo mentiroso. He's like,
Yeah.
no,
I
man.
never do anything wrong.
He's like, no, dude. He goes, this baboso, he threw a rock at their Jeep, man. He goes, nah, I wasn't trying to hit him. He goes, we were drunk. And I go, how old were you? He goes, 14. 14 years old, you were throwing rocks at the federales? What were you doing? He said, and this is a different time. It was a brutal time. And there was an insurrection in that area within the Yaqui community. They had some issues with the governance of, so they sent soldiers to that area. And they had shot one of their friends who was only a 14-year-old boy.
Oh, man.
Over there in Mexico. It was like the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was there running around with my grandpa, it was like the Wild West. I mean, he was boosting people's, sheep and horses.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to Mexico. We're going to places out in the middle of nowhere.
It's like going back
we're
in
borrowing
time,
animals. Like I didn't realize that I was involved in criminality. Like I said, organized crime, man. I started early with my grandpa. I didn't know.
Put the money in the bag.
Well, the truth is, though, that some of these people did owe my grandpa money.
Mhm.
And so he just like took their animals and would hold them hostage, or he would go and actually take them and sell them.
It's collateral.
And that's how he got one of his favorite animals. He had a donkey. So he, I mean, her name was Anita. I think I've said that before.
Yeah.
Did you say they heard moaning?
Moaning?
Mm,
What was it?
it could have been that stupid rice burner outside.
Doesn't sound like moaning, dude. Well, we know this place is haunted, so let's move on. I don't know what that was. I don't want to yell at it right now while I'm on the air and then the spiritual battle. But so what ends up happening with this situation, and we've heard things like when we had Steve Stockton on the show and that wolf howl. Remember that? It was like, oh, it was real long, and he stopped talking. He was like, what is that? I don't know. It could have been anything, man. So this story was interesting. And so he says we were running from the federales, and they were shooting at us with machine guns. He said we were kids, and we were in these big tall reeds by the river, and we jumped down, and they drove almost right over us, but that was our only chance to get out. And they had a spotlight, and they were looking for us. And he's like, and his friend, I could tell he never let him live it down. He goes, we nearly died because of your stupid whatever. So they ran, and they had to go up to the river. This is what they both said. They said this is the absolute truth. Now, Pedro couldn't back up the story of those little duendes becoming coyotes. That would explain what those little coyote men were.
Mm-hmm.
Little miniature dog men. They were small because they were diminutive, little people, little monitos. And so he says, when they were running up to the river, they saw this thing floating across the river going toward the federales and where they were, and they pulled their Jeep up and they started shooting at it. And he's like, while we were running across the river, he goes, it was real shallow. In some spots, the Rio Grande, it's known as the Rio Grande because it's really long. It's a very long, huge river. It encompasses the entire Texas border. It's not known for that because of its width, because my grandfather and grandmother had a cabin right there on the Rio Grande, and I could literally wade across that river. Now, some spots were tricky and dangerous, and you could get swept way downstream or downriver, and I did. I got swept at like half a mile downriver, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to catch my footing, and I was going under and coming back up, and it's these weird channels, and you would get caught up in these like holes, divots and stuff, and I got my foot caught. Luckily, my shoe had just come off, and my grandpa, I just felt his big old hand just pull me out where it got kind of narrow, and he was like, you little stupid son of a bitch, I nearly lost you. Now I have to explain to your annoying hippie daddy why you died. I was like, I love you too, Grandpa. And then he hugged me real tight, and he cried. He would always hide when he would cry. He would hold me, almost suffocating me until he could dry his eyes. I'd be like, what's wrong with your eyes? The damn mosquito out here is just bad. There's all this pollution. There's all these hippies polluting everything. Okay. He would literally do that. I knew he was crying. He wouldn't never let me see him cry. He was emotional. Big as huge, big oxen. Just if he'd have had weights, oh my God, can you imagine? I seen him lift an engine block. The guy was nuts. I've only heard of one other person doing that. It's somebody that Nelly knew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy crap, man. Like, it's just unreal. I mean, and was a notoriously good fighter. Like, he was just a bad dude, man. But I prayed for his soul. I hope that he went where he was supposed to. He was just very unrepentant, at least, physically, verbally saying it. But he was a tough guy, and I never felt unsafe when I was with him. Ever. Never. I remember my dad punching a guy one time at Randy's ice house, and these other guys kind of crowded us. And I was a teenager, and I had to put my skills to the test. And I was like, uh-oh, I don't know, man. My dad was drunk, and I pulled him out behind me, and I said, go back to the truck. And these two dudes were like, what's up, man? Why you want to be hitting people? I was like, when your dad hits like this guy and my dad, they got their beef, whatever. I have no fight with you guys. And I took a pool ball, and the first one that came, I hit him right upside the jaw. Boom. And I was 15, going on 16. And my dad at that time, I was still convinced could whoop my ass. I didn't know if I could fight these guys. And when that first guy fell, his friend kind of went to help him, and I ran out. And I had to drive because my dad was drunk. Didn't happen very often, but my dad he wasn't no big tough guy, but he didn't take no shit either. And he grew up with a dad like that. I mean, you're going to be what you are. Yeah, Alan, been shot? I haven't been shot, but I've been stabbed twice. Been stabbed twice, and then had my skull fractured, been hit with a golf club. I've been through the ringer, brother. I had a busted rib from a bat. So life's been tough physically. What happened?
Alan Garcia is a comment before that saying I guess his great uncle used to work at the slaughterhouse and would drink a glass of blood every day.
Oh,
He said he was a giant man.
gross. My Uncle Sal told me about these guys that would come and they would drink the entire blood of like a pig. Oh, man, it's gross. So what ends up with this situation here, he says, we see this floating thing come across, and it was like making a noise. And it's funny that we heard the moaning noise. I didn't hear it, but the audience heard a moaning noise because that's what this thing was doing. It was moaning, and it was like a shrieking, moaning noise. And he said, I know what it was. And Pedro was like, yeah, it was La Llorona, the crying woman. And I was like, what did it look like? Because I know my mother and your grandmother, Anthony, saw it years ago. So a really weird creature, this thing. It looks like a spirit, but it's like a woman in a white gown. Why Hispanic people see it, in particular, and Mexican people? Almost always people of Mexican descent. And as they say, in the sangre, in the blood, this thing went toward these federales. They shot at it. It kept going. And then it started to turn into a ball of light and chased their Jeep, and they took off. I said, what happened to him? He goes, I don't know. We took the opportunity. We got out of there. He's like, and at that point, there wasn't even like razor wire or anything there. It was just, there are spots where there's nothing at that time. And even when I was a kid, folks, I remember I could hop from one side of the river to the other, back and forth. There was a bridge. There was a little bridge. So if you wanted to cross, you could.
Yeah.
You would, the checkpoint areas over there, though, were like triangulated to where you would have to go through this sort of triangle in the west to get up into civilization. So if you were, as long as you stayed on the border towns, you were fine. You could go and you could just walk across that bridge and go work in America. But if you tried to go, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles inward, then they'll catch you, typically. But so, yeah. And my grandfather actually got put in jail. He smuggled some people over. And they weren't He wasn't a coyote, as they say, like smuggling people. No, they were a family that he was really close to and that he worked with down there. And they raised goats and sheep together. And he tried to help smuggle them up here to Central Texas. And my grandfather had priors. And so here's my grandfather at the age of like 62. He ends up going to jail. And they put him in this jail up in Fort Worth. And I remember when he was up there for like 2 years. And so he was like 64 or something like that. We went up there and we picked him up and got him out. And my dad was just pissed off. And they argued all the way back home. And I'm just sitting there in the middle of the, like back then there wasn't these dual cabs that weren't as common,
Yeah.
We're driving this truck and my grandpa's arguing with him back and forth. And he was like, we were going to start a sheep farm up here. My dad's like, you steal everything. You will take donkeys, sheep, cows, people, whatever. He goes, I don't steal people. I was helping them. I'm like, well, you're helping them, whatever. He's like, you can't do that. And, I remember my grandfather showing up when he was like right before this in his early 60s. And he had this 30-year-old woman with him. Very beautiful Mexican girl. This is my new wife. He said, call her grandma.
Meet your new grandma.
And I was like, I don't remember how old I was, 10 or something. I don't remember. And I was like, yeah, nah, I'm not going to do that. She was like really good looking, and my mother was like, who is this woman? And my mom spoke fluent Spanish. And so I understood most of it, but she was talking to this woman and asking her what she did and everything. She goes, oh, I used to work in a cantina down there,
She needs a green card.
My father, he's good friends with Mr. JD. Yeah. My mom's like, no. And she's wants her get out of here. They stayed the night at her house. And I just remember how pretty she was. And I told my mom, I was like, I don't think you need to rush to judgment here. I think we need to, I think she could hang out. I could learn to call her grandma.
Abuela, I love you.
Abuelita, And so my grandmother, it was my dad on my dad's side, she was like living down in Sour Lake. She was terrified of my grandfather, wanted to get away from him. So it was just a crazy, crazy thing. And so when my grandfather wanted to take me on one of his adventures, and I never told my parents all the wild shit we were doing, and that I was driving a car at the age of 8. His, what do you call that? One of those that has it's like a car, but like El Camino. And so I lost one of my puppies, Lacey. I'll never forget, Lacey Bell. And so I remember I saw somebody. This place is weird, dude. So I remember like going on one of these little forays, and my grandpa said, oh, I'm going to take her back to Mexico. So the next day he shows back up in his pickup and he says, let's go. And my mom's like, you took her back? And he's like, yeah, I drove back. He goes, I took her. He goes, I just took her down to Alice, Texas. That's where she, he lied, he just made up some shit, whatever. That's where she was at. I took her there. Because my dad was like, that ain't enough time to take somebody, So then as soon as we're in the truck and we take off, we go to this hotel right there in Taylor from Rockdale. We're staying in Rockdale, right? And she's in the hotel. And so she just like hung out with us for a few days and helped us like steal some goats. And I told her, I was like, do you know what my grandpa does? Because at this point I knew what it was. I was like, he takes people's goats that owe him money. And my grandpa's like, I don't take them, I give them back.
Eventually.
And I was like, okay.
I'm just holding them for collateral, you little idiot.
Like, nosy little shit.
You don't even know how money works.
And I got a little older and, I remember how old my grandpa was because he was like 70, 71. Let's see, I was 17. So this would have been 7 years later. Yeah. So he would have been about 63. And that was when he got arrested right after that. And he was 65 when he got out.
Jeez. Lost
Lost his leg when he was 66. So for about 4 years, he had one leg. Worst thing that ever happened to him. Big as a house, but he's like me. He could walk anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get tired. He just walk all over the place. Be out in the pasture. I seen this guy. He's always wearing these big old boots. And I remember one time he just stepped on a rattlesnake And I saw it kind of moving around. It was about that much of a neck on it. And he was just like, and he just went down, picked it up, and he just took it to a tree and, unalived it real quick. And he's like, you better watch your step while he's chewing that big old chaw, the big block plug. They called it plug. And I was like, and he's like, I look so stupid. I was over there with these boots. He goes, I don't know why your daddy and your mama, guess you like a little city boy. Yeah, here in shorts like a dummy. I was like, it's hot, Pawpaw. He goes, I don't give a damn. It's going to be a lot hotter when a copperhead bites you on the balls. It's going to be a lot hotter when that rattlesnake bites you on the leg and you ain't got no leg. So he was very, I don't care about your comfort. You need to just, you don't need to look a certain way. You just need to be protected. And he gave me a 22 pistol when I was young, and my mom quickly confiscated it because I was 6. And she was like, this is not something that he needs to be having when he gets a little older. And she's like, he's going to be a shish. He always had that chewing tobacco dripping out of his mouth.
Introducing the Play School 22 long rifle from Play School.
Wasn't a rifle. It was a pistol.
Place your order from the Sears catalog.
All the pieces you need to really just wreak havoc in the neighborhood.
For ages 5 and up. Perfectly safe.
I got into this gun one time, and we were out by the Lake Stanford, and I'll never forget. I saw a coyote, and I ran, and I had it hidden under the seat, and I grabbed it. I started running toward it, and my mom snatched that gun up so fast. And I didn't realize, like, I was little. I was like 6, so there were no bullets in it. And she was just like, she turned, and we got home. She was like, were you looking for these little bullets? He said, yeah, you're never going to see this gun again. And I never did. She said, as long as you don't touch it, she goes, I'll give it to you in 2 years. And my mother had some pretty liberal rules. I mean, when you think about it, 11 o'clock curfew the night I saw the Dogman, and, I should have but I was always like, oh, she's so mean. And she did do some really not nice things, but she had some sense about things, and that was one of them. She's like, you're not going to have a gun at the age of 6. You got to be at least 6.5.
What a tiger mom. Jeez.
So my grandfather really was that guy, though. And Anthony, you've heard my dad's cousins and his half brothers and everybody talk about him.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. They talk about him with like just nuts. I mean, he would do the stupidest things. I saw him punk out a cop right there in Thorndale. He got right in that cop's face, and he was like, your buddy's one who shot me. My grandpa was shot by a police officer while holding my sister. And that cop got away with it. And this is back in the 70s, before I was born. And he was sitting there in that cop's face, and he goes, you're the one that replaced the one that shot me. Your buddy's the one that shot me. And then that guy was like, look now, Mr. JD. He's like backing up, and my grandpa literally took his gun out of his holster, and I'm going like, what the freaking heck? Like, this dude, it was unbelievable. It was just a different time, where he was like Wild West, man. He should have been born way back.
Yeah, I was just
he
thinking
was not supposed to live in this
the
time.
wrong
You know what I was
time,
literally just thinking? I was like, he's probably the reason that Texas didn't have power
Didn't have
until 1950.
1956 or whatever. Yeah, and he was
Single-handedly.
in World War II, and he had some weird stories from that time too. He knew a guy because he traded cigarettes with the Germans.
Yeah.
For their their pendants and all that. And I've shown you, Anthony,
The
some
medals.
of those medals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a whole slew of them that I got from him, and I have the Japanese ones because of his brother. So when they came back from overseas, they were different, to say the least. My grandfather was already wild hellraiser, but when you come back from that and so I remember as a kid, we were driving through Louisiana, as he called it. He didn't call it Louisiana. There was no Louisiana, and it was a Toyota. It was Purina dog chow.
Arena.
Alpo. The porch, So we're driving through Louisiana. He goes, right there, Josh boy, in this town up here on the other side. He goes, I saw a werewolf. I remember that. And I was a kid, and I was like, oh, okay, more of your bullshit. Didn't really buy into it. I get back, and my grandmother's like, where were you at? And I said, well, we were over there by Alexandria. She goes, oh, he's not lying. She's like, that we saw something there. They called me Josh boy. He called me Josh boy. My grandma called me Joshy. She said, Joshy, sit down. She's like, do you know that these things are real? And she said that, and then she went on to talk about the SPJST hall way back then. It was supposedly haunted. She's like, there's a ghost there. They really are. She goes, there's no ghosts in our house. She's like, and there's no werewolves outside. She's like, but they do exist. She goes, me and your grandfather saw one. And my grandpa's up there shaking his head. He goes, I told you, you little ignorant son of a bitch, you don't believe nothing I say. You think I'm lying. I was like, because you lie. That's why, you say all kinds of shit. I see you lying to people. You told one guy you were Mexican. You're not Mexican.
I don't lie. I just tell untruthitudes.
Me and my dad walked in one time while he was telling this guy that his name was like Loopy Monthead. If my dad could tell you the story, it was freaking hilarious. And you know what? I'm going to try and talk my dad into actually recording that story because I don't want to do with him what happened to my mother where she didn't get to tell her stories.
Yeah.
We need to record. And there's a couple other people that we need to record with before, it gets they get too long in the tooth. Who was it we were talking about the other day? We were like, we need to record with these people. There was somebody else. And I was like, we have to record with them. But my grandfather had a bunch of Confederate money too, it was worthless back in the 80s. He's like, it ain't worth nothing. My grandpa gave it to me. And he gave me a big old stack of it. And my dad had some. And so they gave it to me. And somewhere along the line, I lost it. And it was old, and brown or whatever, but it was straight and it was in an envelope. And I had it. I never bent it or anything. And then somebody stole it. And now it's worth money. But because it got longer and longer,
I wonder if anyone ever still has Texas money.
I can barely hear you.
If anyone ever still has like Texas money. Like when we were
that would be something.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Republic of Texas notes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, we did see it at the museum.
That's the only
San
place.
Antonio. The
Yeah,
Buckhorn.
The Buckhorn.
Yeah, the
The
Buckhorn.
The
Buckhorn.
Buckhorn's the only
That's-
place I've ever seen.
That's the only place I've ever seen it,
Yeah.
dude. That would be something, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my grandpa used to say, used to always call Texas a country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back in the country of Texas, and I would be like, "What are you talking about?" And he would laugh. 4th of July, he'd go out there and put a Texas flag out on the house, and I'd be like, "Well, didn't you serve the United States?" He goes, "Against my will."
I'd fly the Texas flag above the United States one. I'm sorry.
Better not say that. Everybody gonna be mad now.
I don't care. I have more Texas pride than U.S. pride.
You don't care about America. You're not an American. But no, we do. We love America. But this was crazy. Like he would tell me this stuff, and I would just be like, "This is wild shit." He's telling me. And I remember a story down in South Texas. We went to go visit some family. Well, they were friends of the family. They were a Mexican family, and I call the guy, my godfather. And he's one of my dad's good friends. And I remember going down there, and his brother, my grandpa, told him, he said, "Tell him the story about the bird." I was a kid, and he saw a giant thunderbird type creature. And he saw this thing down in Brownsville. The bird he claimed he saw, he said the wingspan had to have been 30 feet.
Jeez.
So this was but he did say it didn't look like no bird of prey. It just looked like a giant vulture, but it was enormous. Like it was huge. And the reason he noticed, he was riding his bike when he was a kid, and he noticed it blocked out the sun. And that would have been back in the 60s. In fact, I think it was 66 when he said that happened, 1966. Toasty Waffles says, "I have Texas and Confederate notes." Awesome. Send them to me.
We'll take them.
I need to take a look at these and inspect them for you.
We'll
We-
appraise them.
we'll-
I'll let you know if they're real.
we'll
If you don't give them to me, you're racist.
We'll take those as your cult dues.
That
Yes,
works.
we'll take them as the cult dues, Toasty. Toasty.
We'll send you
Do the right thing.
crisp high fives.
Crisp high five.
Yeah.
We'll give them to each other, transfer them energy, bada bing, bada boom, to your hand.
But it's on layaway. You
We'll
gotta pick
even
them up
give you
later.
a couple of these finger guns.
Hey.
Throw them in the snaps too. Free
Free.
of charge. These don't just, we don't give these out to just anyone.
Yeah, those condors can get absolutely huge, Percy. That's the truth for sure. Robstown. Somebody says my Dada aunt saw a similar giant bird. Robstown, yeah. Robstown be playing baseball, bro. For real. They beat us in the playoffs one year. I was mad. And we had them. And I was up next, and the guy in front of me struck out. You know who it was? Adam.
Oh, of course.
Turd. No, he was good. He went on to play for.
No, I know
Tampa
A-Man's
down in the
good.
Valley. Yeah, he just that pitcher was on fire. It was me and Kendall. We were the only one, you know them. We were the only ones that got hits that day. They shut us down, man. But I was 3 for 3.
Texas
3 for 3
sports,
and that dude. He shut us down, man. We got some hits, but we didn't put anything together. And I was the only one that crossed home plate on that day. But I didn't get any home runs.
I was thinking, I was reading something about like the amazing amount of talent that just like they just don't care to show it. They're not looking to go pro or go to fame.
Yeah,
how many
Dr. J
fighters
said that.
or like?
Look, Dr. J. He was a basketball player before your time, Tony.
Oh, I remember his quote though.
Yeah, he said the best players he found were in the streets of Philadelphia. Guys that couldn't make it in
On the
because
street.
they were always in trouble or whatever. But he said that he'd street ball with those guys, and they would take him to school. And back if it was happening nowadays, they'd be videoing it, and these guys would get discovered or whatever. Back then, back in the 60s and 70s, when Jay was doing all that, they didn't go, oh, okay, let's go check these guys out. They weren't in college.
No one knew about it.
Nah, they didn't go to college, and those dudes dropped out of high school, but they could ball, boy. And so he said the greatest players he ever played against. He said, he named. It was funny because he was like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and then he named some people nobody ever heard of, and they were like, "Who are these people?" And Dr. J was like, "You never heard of them." He's like, "They're ballers that I grew up with in Philadelphia. I'll go out there and street ball with them, dude, and they'll take my lunch money." It's the truth, man. Like I've seen some fighters, dude, that just probably can't make weight in the UFC over 300 pounds.
I was thinking that.
Like Big Mike.
I was thinking about some big
These are
monsters.
killers, boy. I mean, they would have killed everybody in UFC. They would just kill them. They wouldn't have a UFC. But they don't want that because then it's every time that person fights somebody, they're going to hurt them, and then they don't have a fight pool.
That's the difficulty.
It's a delicate balance. And Dana White knew what he was doing. He put certain people in there. He didn't want Fedor because he thought Fedor was going to take everybody down. And he actually wanted a black champion by his own admission because he wanted to get black people more involved so that they would start going and, wanting to be involved in the UFC. So he wanted a black champion.
Wow.
And in the heavyweight ranks. So he didn't like Big Country. He didn't like, what's his name, Tank Abbott. He didn't like any of those guys. Mm-hmm. He didn't want those big white guys in there doing that, beating everybody up. And he didn't like Fedor at all. And Fedor didn't like him. And now you got guys like John Jones, just phenomenal black fighter, just unbelievable. I think that guy will go down as the GOAT. I mean, he has to.
Yeah.
Because Silva would have been, but Silva, played around too much, stuck around too long, and got caught.
John is just an athlete.
John Jones is something else. But I don't care. Fighters, white, black, whatever,
But then again, that's still just for the UFC. There's some monsters out there that won't make it. Yeah.
I tell people this, and they may not believe me. I was this close to fighting Kimbo. But then he got taken to the UFC. But our guys were my friends. Were trying to get it set up. We were going to fight in Louisiana, me and him. And I got to be honest, man. I'm a lot bigger, a lot faster, and I'm stronger at that time. I was over 300 pounds, and I'd seen a video of him fighting this one big guy, and the big guy, he just took it to him because he was so much bigger. And so I was pretty sure we had a couple videos of me throwing down, and I think that made them think, the money's not worth it because if this guy's going pro, whatever, which I had no plans on going pro, and I couldn't get down under 300 pounds if I tried. I could probably shed all my, I'm just a big guy, and I'd have to lose a lot of muscle too on top of it to just. But I'm telling you the truth. That's the honest truth, and he's a nice guy.
Like, there's a picture of you right on our desk.
Yeah,
that we could show if we really need.
Yeah, you can see. Yeah, I was a beast, man. I was like 285 pounds, and there wasn't no fat on me. I'm a beast on there, dude. But yeah. So yeah, and Jorge Masvidal, yeah, he's a Cuban dude.
Yeah, I like him. I like him after he came back.
Game bred. And old Kimbo, he's a fighter though, man.
You know what happened to him? Or he had a lot of losses And then he went on some reality show,
Mhm.
and it was some place where he had a lot of time to just be by himself and think. And then he was thinking like, why am I losing all the damn time? And he's like, I was this close, you know. I was like, these fights were so close. That he was like, he was thinking like, oh, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. He goes, screw that. I should just knock these people the F out. So then he started going crazy, like going for like the kill basically. And that's why I say like it's a change of mentality. And it affects everything.
Lisa says Kimbo was crazy. Nah, Kimbo wasn't.
No,
he really wasn't.
He wasn't.
He
was
wasn't.
very reserved.
He wasn't all crazy. He wasn't. He was actually very business minded. And some of those guys he fought, I gotta say, I'm no offense to them, but they weren't. There wasn't a level there. That's why he got beat when he was in the UFC. He did some, like, he started drinking and partying with after parties and stuff like that. That was his downfall, you know. And he should have like just trained and stayed the course, and he could have been a champion, and he could have sustained it for a while. Because once he got in there and he got refined, because, you know, at the time that him and I were, you know, talking about doing this, it was like there was no, what do you call it? I didn't actually talk to my guys, talk to his people, but there was no, like, he was not refined as a fighter.
Yeah.
Like, I had a lot more formal training as a fighter.
He was more street smart.
Yeah, but he wasn't crazy. He didn't fight stupid. He would just, and he just threw punches to the head.
He learned like, but he just didn't have formal training.
Yeah, he didn't have the training, but
like because Michael J. White was teaching him something.
Yeah, and Shade, you're probably right about that too. I do believe there was a lot of roid use amongst fighters. And the thing is, though, like a lot of people say this about Tyson Fury too. He's so big. He's so big, you know, the size, you know, when you fight a fighter, you know, who's in the same weight class, but the size really does matter, because you see big guys leaning on these smaller guys. They just smother them. They get tired.
Yeah, especially depending on like, you can, like, two people can fight at the same weight, but one guy either has to lose weight and one guy has to either gain that weight to make it there. And that difference still matters, even if you're at the same weight.
Dick Richards says Don Fry was my favorite fighter ever. Yeah, he's a tough old guy. He's living on a ranch, I think, in Wyoming or something like that, in Utah.
Takahashi said Crow Cop too.
Crow Cop, Mirko Crew Cop. Yeah, Crew Cop was something else. So Dick Richards, I need to talk to you. How do I get a hold of you? We need to speak. I need to actually get in touch with you and talk to you about something. So we need to talk. So moving on, this guy, he ends up, you know, going back to what we were talking about. They were talking about La Llorona. They saw this ghost that appeared on the river. These guys gave me some stories, and one of them was of this creature that their uncle, who would be Julio's grandfather, that they saw, and Pedro's his friend. And so they ended up like going with him on this hunt for this particular creature. And it was what someone called a monkey. Now, he had two monkeys, I remember, in his little menagerie. And it was deep down in Mexico. And so they went down in Mexico. This was years later when these guys were already grown. And he said that they went down into basically the edges of what they would say. They would call it the edges of the jungle. They were like where the desert starts to become kind of like a woods, and then it becomes a jungle. And I don't remember, they don't even remember exactly where they were at. They just know that they drove for like 12 hours and they ended up way down in the border. I mean, away in the border between two states down in Mexico, and they don't remember exactly where. And he said, we slept a good portion of the way in the back of the truck. And like I said, it's a different time back in the, you know, but these guys were already older now. It was like in the early to mid 80s. And they encountered something that was not human, but was human-like. And there was a horse ranch down there. And these guys, they were dead serious about getting rid of whatever this was. And looking back on it, he said, my uncle's reputation preceded him, because people all over Western Texas and Mexico knew who he was, and they knew that he was a tracker and he could catch any kind of animal. And he said that there was this creature that was unaliving their horses. And they had a beautiful horse ranch down there, and it was carved into the side of what can only be described as a sort of jungle basin area. Like it kind of went down in these beautiful slopes, and there was like a valley. And they said it was beautiful, breathtaking, 400 acres, and it was just. But once you go 20 yards, you know, or they said 20 meters. Once you go about 20 meters, you know, into either direction, whether it was other than north, whether it was west, east, south, whatever, there was this huge foliage, like a bunch of woods that was jungle-like. And these people that ran this place, obviously they were, you know, very wealthy, and they were breeding these world champion horses down there. And they told them, they said, look, he's this, they called him a he. They said he has killed at least 3 of them. It killed 2 of their mares and 1 of their stallions that they think was trying to defend their herd. And horses, they'll have a stallion that's cantankerous and mean, just like a bull.
Mm-hmm.
He's got all that testosterone in him. And let me tell you something, a stallion horse can kick a bull and kill it if it kicks it right. Now, most bulls and horses, they try to avoid each other. But some bulls, they don't give a shit, man. They'll gore a horse just like they'll gore you. But a really cantankerous stallion, and my grandfather had one, like I said before, his name was Chance, and he was something else. And I remember his neighbor, Ralph, had one named Buckjack, and he had a mule that was his friend. But that dude, he would come out, and they people in the area would pay big money for that horse to impregnate their mares. Ain't nobody wanted babies with Chance. Chance was mean, you know. And he liked me. That horse loved me, but he hated he tolerated my grandfather. He liked me and my grandmother, but he hated my sister. He hated he didn't really hate my mom. Didn't go around him much, but she was scared of him. But he hated my dad, he hated my mom, but loved me. Loved the heck out of me, boy. I could ride around that horse. I would get up in the morning, still in my diapers. I would be like, 2 years old, barely just getting potty trained, And I would run out there, and I would climb up on the stool, and Chance would walk over to me, and I'd ride him. I don't know how. My grandmother was like, I don't know how you knew how to do it. She's like, you couldn't saddle him, but you throw a little blanket over there, your little blanket, and you'd get on him and you'd hold onto his neck. And I vaguely remember that. And as he got a little older, I would saddle him, I would like 4 or 5, and it would take me all day trying to do it, but I would do it. And he would kneel down, and anything I wanted, that horse, he was sweet as pie to me. But anybody else, he threw my sister and my dad both into a barbed wire fence. He did. He stopped and see ya. And my grandpa at that time, his brother had a bull that he kept out in the pasture. And Chance, that bull was not super mean, but I would wander out into the pasture to see Chance, and Chance would come running, bobbing his head, and that bull, I don't remember his name. I remember him, but he would come up, and he had like some weird name, like some goofy name. And he would come up, and I would feed them both. They'd eat hay, and oat nuggets and shit like that. And I would get into the feed, and I'd be out there, and I'd just giving them food. And my grandpa would be like, "Don't be out there with that bull. I don't trust that bull." The bull, and I'm like, "The bull don't like you, Papa. He likes me." And so one time, I remember this. This was a memory I had. I think I was like maybe 5, like in kindergarten or something. And I remember the bull was walking next to the horse, which they didn't go around each other unless I was in the pasture. And I remember somehow I jumped off of the horse onto the bull's back. And this bull had a set of horns too, and I don't remember even what kind he was. I just think he was red. and I got on him, and they called him something like Brick or something, some goofy name. It was just like his name was Brick or something. And I was when they were taking him away, because he had gotten older, and they were probably taking him to get rid of him or whatever. I remember looking in his eyes, and folks, I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but I was 7 years old, and I saw a tear come out of his eye. And I'm not. You don't believe that these animals feel? I know they feel. And I petted him, and I wanted him. I wanted him to not be taken away. I didn't know where they were taking him. And he was getting old, and my grandpa kept trying to grab me to pull me away from the trailer. And my Uncle Bill was coming. He'd come to pick him up, and I was like, Uncle Bill, don't take him, please don't take him. I called him Red because I didn't know. They called him like Brick or something. And he's like, he's old, there's nothing we can do with him. He's just going to eat and die, And I was like, then let him eat and die. But, I was begging.
Yeah.
I was begging. And I remember that day, wasn't but about a year later, I guess, Chance was gone. And I was devastated. I just, I knew those animals very well. And that bull could be mean, but he was never mean to me. And what's even crazier is the neighbors had this really mean white German Shepherd, and that thing was horrible. It was horrible. And it was like, so that dog would come and sleep on the porch, and I'd go out there and play with it and lay on it and everything. And my grandma would go out there, and she'd be like, oh, crap. She's like, you got that dog. That dog will go after the chickens. I said, no, not if we have it, Grandma. And she's like, I don't believe that. And so we ended up taking him. And my grandpa named him Whitey. So he just named him Whitey. And Whitey was our dog, and they had him for a long time. And they had him and Chief, another German Shepherd. And they just were best friends. And they would play with the coyotes. I'm not even joking, out in the pasture. And then when we would go out there and watch them, they'd stop playing with them and chase after them. And then run back to the house like, yeah, we just chased those guys off, man. They were...
Oh, they're watching. Get back to
They were trying to get us to play with them. We were like, man, F you, dude. Different colors, man. Wrong colors, bro. Wrong neighborhood. We got rid of them, though. You're safe now. Safe. You're welcome. Can we have some food? Snacks. I think snacks all around, right? Yeah. But I would give them snacks, and my grandpa would get so pissed. He's like, why are they letting them coyotes come up here? Why are they playing with them? And I was like, Papa, they like them. He goes, you like them, but they ain't supposed to like each other. And I said, well, none of the chickens have been grabbed. Not yet. He was, no foxes, no coyotes, no wild hogs. My grandpa would go out there, and he would take care of them real quick. And he used to tell me, he's like, you're a nice, he's telling me, you're nice, Josh boy, but you ain't a killer like me. You need to learn to be a killer. So I did them a favor. They're always talking about snakes. And my grandmother loved to tell this story. And one day I go outside, and I'm determined. I'm like, I'm gonna kill some stuff. Just show my grandpa what was up. I had it in me. And I see these snakes. They were all over the back porch, and I was stomping the crap. I was stomping on all of them. There was a bunch of them. And my grandma goes out there, and she's like, what in the hell are you doing? And I'm like, Grandma, I'm killing all these snakes, all of them. I'm going to stomp them all to death. She goes, that's my bait. Those are worms. She's like, we were going to go fishing later. Now we got to go out to Ralph's to get some more bait. Why did you do that? I thought these were snakes. I was taking care of the, snake problem. Well, I tried. And my grandma,
A for effort.
She used to always tell my grandpa, she's like, you leave him alone. He's a sweet boy, and animals love him. And he's like, the world's going to chew him up. He's too nice. He's too nice. He's wild, but he's nice, and he's, and he always said me being half Mexican made me wild. Like, you didn't look at the shit he was doing.
Yeah.
Like, that ain't making me wild. Is you're stealing people's goats. It was
No, it's that Mexican in
that
you.
Mexican in him makes him mean. He'll get a knife and start cutting everybody to ribbons any day now. My grandpa, he once said, Mexicans, they learn how to walk, and then they learn how to stab, or maybe the other way around. Can you imagine? They're crawling with a knife. Can't walk yet, but they stab the shit out you,
They
man.
just hold it in
Come
their
out the
mouths
womb with
like
a pocket knife.
Yeah. I don't know, man. But you know, my grandmother was very loving and very sweet, and she was the antithesis to him and his brutality. You know, but he was. I watched him slap a guy at a barbecue joint one time right there in Lexington. I was like, holy shit, this guy, man. That dude cut in line, and he goes, "I'm in a hurry." And my grandpa's like, "Oh, really?" And he grabbed him by his collar and pulled him back. And that dude said, "Look, old man." And my grandpa just went, bam. And that dude laid on. He just went to sleep right there. And nobody said anything. We all just like stood in line to get our barbecue. And my grandpa was like, "He'll wake up. He'll be all right." And I was kind of worried. I was like, you know, this guy might get up and try to do something stupid, whatever. And my grandpa was like, and he's like, "Just in case, go out to the truck, grab my pistol." This is not no little gun. It's like one of these big old, like dirty,
Hand
hairy
cannons.
guns. And I'm running back with it, you know, 7-year-old kid. Here's your gun. And we're in line, and my grandpa just sticks right there in his overalls, just in case this guy decides, in case I got to shoot this feller.
Go get my 44, boy.
And you're just like, you know, it's like 1983 or something, you know, you're just like, what is 1982, I think. And I was like, yeah, even then, you know, I'm thinking this probably isn't correct. You don't see other people acting like this. But he just kind of lived by his own rules. And back then, you know, he would tell the police to F off too. But he got pulled over one time in Taylor. I'll never forget. He told that cop, he goes, "Go eat shit. I ain't paying that. Now, don't give me no ticket. I'm gonna F you up." And that dude was just like, "Mr. Turner, now you got to obey the traffic laws." He goes, "You see me obeying them? I pulled over for you, son of a bitch. Let me go." And that guy just walked back to his car. And he just said, "Let's go back to Thrall." And he just drove back to Thrall. And he goes, "He knows I'll whoop his ass. I'll do something to him." I'm like, holy crap, man, this guy's nuts. He said, "One day you'll understand." And years later, when I was that way, I understood. You know, and thank God I'm not that way anymore. My dad once said that I was like him, but 2.0, like a lot smarter and a lot more, you know, whatever. But yeah, my grandfather was a big guy, and he was incredibly, but he was very in tune with this paranormal stuff. Like he knew it existed. He knew it existed. I remember one time he had a house in Thorndale, and I'll never forget. That's when he would let me drive his El Camino, and I was like, you know, 9 and maybe 10 or something like that. And he would say, you know, like stupid, weird things to me. Like he goes, "Look, you can be up here in the front of this house, but don't go to that back bedroom back there. There's something back there." And he knew like there was something there. And I would stay with him, and I would be like, "What is it?" And he goes, "What do you think it is? You can't see it, but it can do stuff." And I'd be like, "A ghost?" He goes, "Whatever." He goes, "The people that used to live here," he goes, "they were a bunch of druggies, and one of them died in that room back there. And now I hear stuff and see stuff coming out of that room. I just ignore it." He goes, "And I suggest you do the same." So here's a short little ghost story. I remember I was a child, and I remember laying on the couch, and I remember hearing somebody sneeze. And I look over, my grandpa was laying there on the other couch, and he was passed out. And, you know, back then we had like 3 or 4 channels, you know, we had ABC, CBS, NBC, we had PBS, the public broadcasting channel.
Yeah.
And after like 11, I'd say 12 to 1 o'clock on a weeknight in particular, they would do this with the jets flying overhead. And then they would play the national anthem, and then those networks would sign off until 6 a.m. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember that was just static on the TV, and I got up and I turned it off, and I heard like a cough, or it was, I guess, like a sneeze or something. And I look up, my grandfather's asleep. And so I was like, what in the hell? So I crept back there, and I looked in that back room, and he just had some boxes and stuff back there. And I was like, so I went back to the front, and I went and laid back down. I said, you know what? I don't know what that is. So the next night, you know, me and my grandpa had gone riding around, whatever, and I would drive him around. And like I've been driving since I was young. My dad first started me driving when I was 6. I know that sounds crazy, but I would sit in his lap, and he would let me steering wheel and shift the gears and everything. And so by the time I was 11, I was driving him or my grandpa or my uncles or whatever, or even your dad, you know, from a beer joint, you know, like,
Mhm.
okay, you're drunk, let me drive, you know, and I could drive, you know. And so I was driving, and this, you know, we saw this black thing run across the road, and my grandpa says, "Oh, there you go. There's one of them Bigfoot." I was not even like, I was like looking, you know, kind of like at the dashboard for some reason. I look up and something just went, like, I just saw this, you know. So I can't say it was, I don't know what it was. And my grandpa said it was a Bigfoot. And he goes, they exist. He's like, but he wasn't interested in them. You know what I mean? Like, he
Yeah.
didn't give a shit. Like, he knew this stuff was there. And he used to always tell me, you know, like, he goes, there's stuff out there, just don't mess with it. So I had a dream in that house in Thorndale. I had this dream, and in the dream, this guy came from that back room and was standing there, and he was all like, and he looked like he was tweaked out or something. And I was a kid, and I was looking at him going like, what is wrong with you? And then I woke up, and and when I went to the bathroom, you know, this was like summertime, and we had those window units on two different sides of the house. And I went to the bathroom, and it was cold as ice in that bathroom. And I told my grandpa, I said, we were eating that next day. We were over at at his uncle's, my Uncle SD, and he was like, we were always over there. He had a beautiful ranch, and he had a ranch, which was about 200 acres worth of ranch. And then he had 300 acres of a farm. He had 500 acres of land. And I remember it was a beautiful place. And we would go out there all the time. And my grandpa was a mooch. He'd go out there and they'd feed him. He'd drag me along. And my Aunt Carmel, she loved me. She'd say, Josh, you're looking so handsome. And I would just be like, oh, cool. What are we eating? We got chicken fried steak, fresh peas and corn. This is back when they grew their own stuff with no GMO shit. And she's like, and you know, tomorrow we're going to make chicken. I'd be like, oh, man, it's awesome. And so we were there talking at dinner. And I said, I told him about my dream. And so nobody said anything. We go outside, and Uncle SD, he had like one eye, was always part closed. He's smoking his cigar. He goes, you know, you got down there and holler with them boogers out there, them Bigfoot. Now you got a ghost over there at the house, huh? And I was like, yep. And he was like, it's real. Scare the shit out of you, dude. I don't know what his angle was, but he loved to scare the crap out of me. He'd go, yeah, that ghost will come and take you if you're bad. And I was like, what does it do? You know, and I'm a little older, and I'm like 9 or 10. I think I'm a big boy, you know. I'm like, what does it do? It'll eat you. It'll eat you. Start with your toes, so you feel every bit of the pain, and it'll eat your ankles and your knees, go up to your pecker and your balls. It'll eat you. Or eat your stomach. By the time you get to the head, you're screaming. You just want it to end. You're like, that sounds horrible. And I'm like, how do you know? He goes, it happened to me. They ate me. They killed me. You think about it for a second. You're like, what? My cousin Donnie, he'd be over there laughing. He was a bull rider, made a lot of money in the oil business. Great guy. And he'd be over there laughing. He'd be like, you ain't figured it out yet, man? That was his great grandpa. He's like, you know, they're all full of shit, man. He talks just like this. He said, they're all full of shit, man. Ain't no such thing as no damn wood boogin ass, whatever the hell, ain't nothing out there. Then one day, one of my other cousins was there, and they were down there near that holler where they did, you know, explicitly tell us, Uncle JC, Uncle SD, do not go down there. And Uncle JC was a little softer, nicer guy. And he was an older brother of SD, but he was not as successful. But he was more laid back. You know, SD was the businessman. For my grandfather's brother, it was James. James was the businessman, and his son, Jimmy, I call him Uncle Jimmy. I love him to death. He's a great guy. And these people I grew up with, right, on my dad's side, on that hillbilly-ish, redneckish side, whatever. And I remember my cousin going down there. And he said, dude, I was hanging around down there by the tree line, and there was this rope swing that you know, but we were told, and even SD and JC had partitioned this they'd put a little fence running along the creek. You know, they were like, you kids want to go down there and play, do not go beyond that. How they knew not to go beyond that is something I don't know. But I will say this. My cousin told me, I'm not going to say his name because he's got a business and he's just, you know, I don't want people thinking that he's nuts or whatever, and I don't want to put him on the spot. He's talked about it a little bit and he's not real comfortable with it. You know, he doesn't know what it was. But he hears this roar coming from that left side of the holler where you would jump off of that swing, off of that tire swing. And my other cousin, Donnie, had claimed to have heard something down there before too. And now I did not see anything, but I was down there and we had this bull that we would pester. You want to talk about, you got nothing better to do but go out there shooting at frogs and, you know, and aggravating a bull.
Yeah.
And this was a Brangus. He was not a nice guy, not a nice guy. And we would go up and we would try to slap him. And then we would do it when he'd get by the fence. So we could run and jump over the fence and he would pull up because it was hot wire. We called it hot wire. It was electric fence. And there was barbed wire on there. They didn't give a shit about that barbed wire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you made them mad enough, they'd run through it. You know, and then they would short it out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. They would just stomp on it and they'd take the shock. You know, I see them do it. And so there was this bull that he had there, and he wasn't there very long. Like, he was so damn mean, and he wasn't playing nice. You know. So yeah, it's a Brahman and Angus boondock. It's called a Brangus, and that son of a bitch, boy, he hit Donnie, and Donnie went up 30 feet up in the air over that hot wire, and I got away. I was faster. I could run, even though Donnie's a little bow-legged ass. I could outrun him. I was always fleet of foot. So we were down there, and I heard this roar. We were sitting on one of the tractors, or we were sitting up in one of the tractors because that damn bull had us pinned. So we were playing a game with a couple of our other cousins, you know, Trey.
Yeah.
And so we were like, let's get to the tractor and let's see if we can go up in the tractor. And we got pinned up in there, me and Donnie. And it got about dark. And then we hear Aunt Carmel on the back porch, my great aunt, you know, great aunt. And she's like, boys. And she had a bell and she'd ring it, you know. And she would be like, boys, Josh, Donnie, you know, Trey, so whatever. We're up in that tractor.
Yeah.
And so Donnie opens it up and he's like, Aunt Carmel, she can't hear real good. You know, at this point, she's already in her like late 70s, whatever. She turns around, she walks back inside. We're too far away. And my cousin Muff, yeah, that's his nickname, Muff. Everybody called him Muff. And everybody knew him as Muff. And he didn't give a shit. That son of a bitch. He looked out the window and saw us in that tractor and left us out there. I'm waving, hey, and he's like, closes the window, doesn't care. He's a lot older than us now. He's ancient, man. He's like in his 70s now. But he goes back, and then they're eating supper, and Donnie's like, man, I'm hungry. They're eating supper. I was like, yeah, and they don't know that we're out here because Muff looked out the window, and he goes, that prick. And I said, dude, that bull ain't going nowhere, man. That bull's there. And it was just, he camped out. He was like falling asleep, standing there, the son of a bitch. And I'll never forget my cousin, my little cousin. He says, what is that? And he points. And once again, like I missed it. Everybody goes, ooh, what is that? And we look, and that bull opened its eyes, and he started kind of walking in that direction. Then he turns and just kind of walks, and then he walks away from the tractor and starts walking, thank God, away from, there's an abandoned house back there where they used to live in. They built another house. And from the abandoned house, and he was going toward the pasture, out into the open pasture. And I was like, he's leaving. And once he got far enough away and I knew I could make it, I said, I'm running. I jumped out first. I was like, I'm gone. Donnie, he was about less than a year older than me. And typically, though, he was the leader. But that day, I was like, I'm going. Y'all can do what you want. Stay up here. And we had one of our little cousins with us, and Clayton. So he had to jump on my back. I said, don't jump on my back. I'm not going to be able to run with you. And Donnie's like, yeah, you stay on his back. And just took off. So I had to carry his little ass. And then the bull turned around and kind of looked at us and it turned back away. So we get back up to the porch. And I remember this. And I said, what did y'all see? And Donnie's like, I didn't see nothing. He's like, and I said, well, we've heard stuff over there. And JC says to stay the hell away from that holler. He goes, yeah, they say a lot of things. They also say ghosts eat you. Are you going to believe this bullshit? And I said, dude, and Trey was very adamant. And Trey's so young, he probably don't even remember. And Trey was there with Billy. Now, Billy, Trey's grandpa, he was there. And my grandpa was there. And they were all inside the house eating. My grandpa did not give a shit that I was out there. He just figured, you want to sleep out in the dark? Go sleep out in the dark. So we get back inside the house. And Trey's like, I saw Bigfoot. Now, years later, I asked him about it. He don't remember it because he was like 5 years old or something. Clayton was like a toddler, or maybe Trey was 7, I think. Sorry, 6 years old. He said he don't remember it. He said, remember being scared to being up in the tractor. Now, oddly enough, Trey's first cousin is one of my good friends, one of my best friends I grew up with, and his name is Don too. Donnell. You know him. We had a weird experience out there at Rice's Crossing one time. We drove a tractor, Uncle Bill's tractor, out into the middle of the pasture. My sister was supposed to be babysitting us, and she was just like, yeah, do whatever you want. Get away from me. And so we were like, okay, we will. So we went out in the middle of the pasture on that land, and we drove out into the middle of the plowed field and got stuck because of all the rain. We're up there on that tractor, and we hear this loud, like roaring noise coming from that tree line. And we didn't want to jump down because of it was mud. And when you tried walking in it, the mud is that black clay mud and it sticks to your feet. And then by the time you walk 10 feet, you have 18 pounds of mud.
Your feet are all covered in
it's that
mud.
Taylor curse, man.
Mm-hmm.
Grow anything.
Yeah.
You could grow anything. Grow a banana plantation if you want to. But that land is so bad if it rains, it is so nasty. And so we jumped down and we started trying to run back to the house, and it was overcast and it was kind of rainy. And we heard that noise, and to this day, I don't know what the hell that was. So my uncle had a neighbor that lived across the way, and he would talk crazy about, he was a crazy old man, lived out there by himself, his wife, he was a widower. And he claimed he shot at one of these gray-faced, not baboon, apish-like creature. He goes, I was watching public access channel, the public, what's it called, PBS, public broadcasting, whatever. They'd have these animal shows on all the time on Saturday. Yeah. He goes, I was watching them. He goes, and it looked like a chimp, but it had a gray face. He goes, and I don't know, it wasn't real big, so I wouldn't call it a Bigfoot, but it had some weird looking footprints. Now, the print, the way he described this, and I remember this very specifically. This was in between Rice's Crossing and Hutto. The print, I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. It was like, about like that, about that wide, if I remember. I got to look at it, maybe a little bit, about that big. Wasn't huge, bigger than a man's foot, but it wasn't like gigantic. Like Zane's feet are like what, 15 or something. Yeah. But the toe, it was a toe. The way that he described it, he goes, but it was like this little space, and then the toe, not like that thumb that these apes have.
Yeah.
And he said he saw tracks like that. And my great uncle, didn't lie. He said, yeah, I seen them. I saw the tracks. And he goes, and when he was out there, he had a bunch of cows right there in that land adjacent to it. And something had taken one of his steers and just twisted its head right off. And, this whole area is inundated until like the last, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, Anthony, the stories kind of stop around 2010, 2012.
Yeah, just about.
Until recently, we got somebody talking about Apache Pass again. But around that time, the stories, you hear a bunch of them from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then they kind of slow down, and then they kind of petered out. So if they were to track, like if somebody were to be so inclined and try to like track down, you know, like the stories that they, I don't know, you would, it would look like they kind of left the area, right? Or the encroachment and habitation of people. And there's still not a whole lot of people out there.
Mhm.
Still a lot of private land out there. It's one thing that Eric Palazzo was talking about here, you know, in Central Texas. There's a lot of private land. People own huge tracts.
Yeah, most of it's private land, actually.
Yeah. The Rebobs Boondock, that's over in California. I've got stories of them too. I need to do something about them. We have a whole lot of stuff we need to do. The security guard stories, we need to do those too. But there was a terrifying ghost story down there in Copeland, about 8 miles from there. Maybe not even that far, maybe 6 or 7 miles. The Rice is crossing to Copeland. Look it up real quick, see how far it is. Me and Chief talked about that area where it's a triangle between Rice Crossing, Manor, and Copeland. Creepy, weird stuff. The black dog comes out of that holler. Norman's Crossing, it's got that weird phantom horse and a weird dog. You just do a book about all that crap. Just write about all of that shit. I mean, it's so much of it, dude. The headless cavalryman over there chasing people.
It's about 5 miles.
5 miles. Okay, so it's not even that far. But that cavalryman, he's over there, out there near Apache Pass, going north, right? Going near San Gabriel. Isn't that where he's at?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Hoxie headlessman, he's another one. And you get these weird, there's this like dwarf looking creature that'll throw fire at you. I'm not even joking. That's what people claim over there by Granger Lake. There's a few people who told me some weird stories about seeing balls of light coming up out of the water. The town of Friendship is buried underneath that lake. It's unbelievable. You should read the history of it. It is creepy. What somebody said, don't be rude. What happened, Sailor? Who's talking here? Somebody say something?
Somebody asked if you're telling encounters tonight.
That's what this is. What are you talking about, dude? Like, so anyways, this guy across the road there that he had this long, both of those properties at Rice Crossing. They had this long drive, you know, like you had to get up to your drive. And when it rained, right there where the gravel ended, it was this black mud, you know, farmland. There was a tract of farmland, about 50 acres that he farmed. And he would get, you know, washed in, you know, when it would rain. And it used to rain all the time down in there. And so this guy, like, he claimed that there was this, the only way he could describe it, you know, was this creature, like, that would come to, you know, and it began to you know, predate on his chickens. He didn't have any cows. He was just a farmer and he had chickens. But Uncle Bill was a farmer and a rancher, and he had a bunch of cows. And one of them tore the steer's head off. You know, at least that's what he claimed. And he blamed that guy. He said the guy did it. He took it. You know, but I don't think he did. I think that thing did it. I still do to this day. I think it was that Bigfoot-like creature. Now, we've done a show called Besieged by Bigfoot where we talk about these creatures that are found in Central Texas. I don't get a lot of stories about them anymore. And like I said, it could be in man's encroachment or whatever. But that area, I promise you, if you go tromping around out in that area and away from habitation, you'll see something. I'm not even joking. And it's dark out there too at night. We've done a live drive-through through there.
Yeah.
And you hear weird stuff. Now, I had a guy tell me, and I've known this guy for years too. He's a friend that I met through my cousin's Trey Clayton, mutual friend, and he introduced me. Their friend introduced me to this guy and says, "Hey, man, this guy's got a story." So this is weird. It was like a giant bat-like creature, and it was in between Manor and Elgin, which is not far from there either. How far is from Copeland is in between Manor and Elgin? Let's say smack dab in between, probably. but it
Yeah.
was out in the country further north past Highway 290. I'd say probably 8 miles from there, maybe, right?
Yeah, looks like it.
So, and so he said, dude, there was this creature that nested on the top of one of our barns. He said, we had two of them. We had a small one and we had a big one. One of the big one was the stable. When they had the stable is not a barn. It's two different things. It is it's a type of barn.
Stables for horses.
Stables for horses, yeah. But the other barn was like where they had chickens and they had some other and baby animals and stuff and a few goats. And they had one that had been taken and it was like unalived. In other words, and it was exsanguinated. They know because when they found a carcass and there was no blood in it. So they called the sheriff's department. It's a different county over there. They called the sheriff's department and they went over there and they looked and they said, what do you want us to do? There's no blood in this animal. They found puncture marks around its neck, a couple different, like it had struggled, And so you're obviously thinking like a chupacabra, but then he says, it was raining one day. And he goes, and we hear this weird screech. I've heard this before too, out in the pastures. First 15 years of my life, folks, and even time after that, even after seeing the Dogman, I heard noises coming from the woods. Thank you, Tracker, for that donation. I've heard sounds. Now, not until I was working out near Row Lane, and you can go look it up now. We don't work there no more, so I don't care. Go look it up. It's Row Lane on the edge of Pflugerville. In between Pflugerville and Hutto is where my wife saw the Bigfoot. I saw it too, and I'll say this. I'll go on record as saying I saw a Bigfoot only because she saw it, and I trust her and I believe what she saw. I just saw the side of something very large that was a different color than the Angus cattle. The Angus are black, and they were all in one corner. I've worked cattle. I know cattle, and they don't do that unless they're eaten or they're spooked or they're trying to stay warm. And this was, late spring. They were not trying to stay warm. Something predatory had spooked them. And they were all huddled into one corner. It was weird. And up on the hill above, there's a ridge. There's a horse stable up there, or there was, because these idiot developers, they build right up onto the ass of some rancher or farmer. I'm sure they appreciate that shit. And you look out your window and you have your pasture, your beautiful rolling hills, and tract housing.
It's the pressure of them to sell.
Yeah. And so they built right up on them. And these horses were kicking. You could hear them. They were, neighing and they were kicking. You could hear them kicking those boards. And my wife, she's like, what is that noise? I said, that's them horses up there. They're kicking. There's something there. And then she's like, oh my God. She like freaks out. And she's like, look at that thing. And I turned it, did a U-turn, and I just caught it. And I see this thing move. But it was short. Reason is because it moved the way it did sideways. And so I caught a glimpse of it. She caught it. And then from the side view, the face was flat, which made us think, hey, this is not a Dogman. This is a Bigfoot type creature. So that was one of her Bigfoot encounters. She's had two. And so she's like, I'll never forget it. I saw it. She goes, it was a Bigfoot. And the weird thing is the way it disappeared into the trees. There's no way it should have been able to hide by those trees. And this thing is very much a predator. And I think that if we hadn't put the lights on it, and I held that flashlight on it, it was going to try to take one of those cows. Better believe it. And there was some calves in there. It's probably going to grab a calf. Maybe kill the mama too if she resisted. But they're predators. Yeah, people can say what they want. I talk to them. In fact, we get together and we play Boggle together. Yeah, sure you do.
We discuss our vegetarian diet together.
Yes. And while we play bridge.
We've seen
Bridge club. Bigfoot Bridge Club.
We've seen Kumbaya and play bongos.
Yep. And it's nice, to romanticize and fantasize about these things being. If you saw what they really looked like in their face, you wouldn't be so like, oh, hell, it's cool. Because some of the pictures, I'll wear like a shirt and it shows Sasquatch looking kind of friendly or whatever. Make no mistake.
I mean, the same people like
that's a gorilla. That's jujitsu. That's that jujitsu school.
Exactly like the same people. If they saw like a silverback gorilla, they'd freak out and be afraid of it. But somehow, a Sasquatch, something bigger and smellier and meaner,
more terrifying.
that's my friend. No, no, dude. Okay, if you believe that, then go to your nearest zoo and go climb into the gorilla enclosure and be its friend.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't work out too well. Not usually. But you could look at it like this: the dumbasses take themselves out by going out there and let's shake hands and be friends. Now, there's another thing too. If somebody wants to be understanding that maybe there's good ones and then there's bad ones, I can get that. But I would say that I would not even err on that. I wouldn't even make that mistake.
It's because you can't risk it. It's like, why would you? What? Here's a parachute. There's a 50% chance that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let's go jump out of a plane because, hey, why not? It's late. That's how you end up at Denny's, folks.
And you're believing some guys like, I've done it 3 times. It's worked every time for me.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Good for you. But that didn't, Yeah. And
I don't have your luck.
You have this area, which is, since I've been a child, has been inundated with encounters and stories. Texas is a weird place, folks. It's a very weird place. I'm going to write a book. Okay. I am going to, and I've been saying that, but we're almost done with we got like another little bit of a chapter left in the vampire book and we're done.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that it's, I don't want to do this because these evil people are doing this and all this, whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm saying it's good, I want to make it correct. I want to piss some people off too, if you want to call them people. But I've been doing that for a long time. What we're trying to do, though, is we're going to get together with some encounters from Texas, and we may just do different sections of Texas, different areas. So if anybody wants to go and run around looking for stuff, maybe just be careful for purple posts because you will get your ass blown off. Not even joking. Texas, they don't play around and they don't bluff. Then most people are going to come out and pull a gun out on you. In Texas, they're going to use it. There's other places like they might, I'll pull a gun and point it at you, and doesn't happen a lot here. It might, but there's people that will just shoot you because they don't play. It's still very much like it's just Texas is what it is. It's Texas. And so you don't see a lot of people pulling guns and not pulling the trigger. I'm just being honest. So these things, they inhabit these areas, these still very much wild places because that's, there's not people there to bother them. But they do take livestock and they will absolutely, I'm just going to say the word, kill your pets. And I've said this before, you need to plead the blood of Jesus over yourself, your family members, and all of your pets. Say the name of the animal. Put your hands on it if you have to. Pray over your things because they will absolutely. I have talked to hundreds of ranchers and farmers in Texas. Looked them in the eye and talked to them, and they've told me they've lost livestock to something that they can identify that looks like a goat-headed, ram-headed creature or a Bigfoot or a demonic-looking dog, wolf-like thing. Dude, I'm telling you, you hear it all the time.
You even heard the crawlers, the little rake things.
The pell crawlers, yeah. They'll take things and they'll unalive them. And this chupacabras, these dog-like chupacabras, these reptilian-like chupacabras, 2 different things, but also the same thing. I believe they genetically modified these things. They were vampiric to begin with, and they made them. And those dog-like creatures are just doing what vampires do, and they're drinking blood. They're unaliving animals. You can get mad for a certain animal being but that's what they do. And a vampire is a vampire. It's going to do what it does.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to drink blood. And I tell people that somebody says only vampires drink blood. I get it in quotations or something, but that's these animals do, and Bigfoot does it too. They do. And so they're not my friend. Now, I'd be glad to have someone come on here and they can debate me, and I can give you 1,000 reasons why they're not my friend. And I don't subscribe to that at all. I've had some Bigfooters come at me hardcore, man. That one idiot, I don't say his name, but he's over there. He just came out of left field because he doesn't like my approach on it about these creatures. And it's really just because I don't believe in the flesh and blood friendly Harry and the Hendersons bullshit.
Yeah.
That's what his deal is. And then he goes and joins the gang of pricks that want to say a bunch of stupid shit all the time. Look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay? I know what I'm talking about. Or I wouldn't be up here talking. If I didn't know, didn't think I knew, I would just shut up and let somebody else do it. But that somebody has to say what needs to be said. These bigger channels, they have these audiences that are based on their certain narrative. And you know what they do? They do what's popular. They say what's popular. They say what's cool. They don't go out on the limb and say things that are kind of wild or kind of out there like I do, because that is not popular. They like these encounters, you know, where it's a flesh and blood, and it's a big old ape-like creature. It's an ape, you know, it's a big ape.
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot came to me, so he gave me some berries. So I traded him some beads for those berries, and we developed a friendship.
Later, they found me in his poop. I'm now a ghost. I'm a ghost here talking to you. And he shows you some kind of Beetlejuice looking shit. And then he's like, "Rah! Yep, I'm Bigfoot poop now, guy. I'll see you." Old prospector, old Willie the prospector. So this guy down in the horse ranch down in Mexico, they find this creature that is unaliving these horses. It turns out that it is a Bigfoot type creature. And these guys swear up and down that their uncle shot and killed this thing. They went back to a cave where this thing would crawl out of it. Now listen to this. According to Roberto, he said this thing would crawl out of the cave. He goes, it would be on its hands and, you know, like its arms and legs out at its side, and it would crawl out of it on its fingertips. And he goes, like a spider, araña. I said, no mentira. He said, no, man, for real, dude. And he said that my uncle was waiting. We were up in a tree, and I was wondering what the hell we were doing. He said, and we got 2 changuitos from that. That means monkey. They were like, they had these 2 monkeys there. And he says, if you want to pay me, you know, pay me and give me part of the payment, I'll take the monkeys. So they gave him a male and female monkey. They were spider monkeys. And not to be confused with the spider Bigfoot, because that's a thing. They do crawl around like a freaking spider. I am not joking, and I'm not even kidding. And you may not agree with everything that's in his book, but I encourage you to read Jerry Williams' book. I'm telling you, he's not paying me to plug this book either. I'm just telling you that our beliefs run very parallel, because he's looking at it from, he's a full-blooded Choctaw, and he's looking at it from the Choctaw legends. Now, I'll say this about Jerry. Jerry, I mean, he's very rigid in the way he looks at things and sees things, and he rubs people the wrong way. He may not always agree with what I say. I may not always agree with what he said. He may not give a shit what I say. I don't give a shit what he says. The bottom line is he's right about a lot of it. He really is. Mm-hmm. These things do absolutely have some sort of spidery DNA because of the way that they do. Like we talked about it on Clyde Lewis' show.
Yep.
And Clyde said he was here. He was getting reports of these things happening that way. And I'm telling you, they move that way for a reason. This was down in Mexico, southern Mexico. Well, it would be central, it would be south central Mexico where this happened. On the east side of Mexico. And it was eye-opening for these guys. They were, young teens, and they were like, holy crap, what is that? And so Roberto told me, 3 things that he had seen in his life. He saw a Bigfoot be unalived, if you want to call it that. He saw the La Llorona when he was running from the Federales. And then, of course, and that was when he was real little. But then he saw this other creature, these duende or monitos, and they turned into these little coyotes. These things that he saw, and and he says, dude, he wasn't trying to be crass or rude or whatever. He goes, but what Julio's seen, he goes, Julio's young. He's seen some things. I've seen some things, bro. So I messaged Julio back. I said, thank you for hooking me up with these guys, because they told me some amazing things. Very thick accents. It helps to be a little bit bilingual to kind of figure it out. But here's the thing. When they shot this creature, they were up above it when it came up out of its cave. He goes, I don't know how my uncle knew, but he found that hole. He stuck his head, he sniffed, and he says, that's where it's at. And he said that he took some dead chickens, freshly unalived chickens, and laid them there, 3 of them. And this thing crawled out like a spider. When they shot it, its legs, its arms, get this. This is what's so weird about this. The arms are out like this. They fold up like this and go over its back. And then the legs did the same thing.
So
and the head went in like that, and it crawled upside down, and where its belly and everything was exposed. And then he took kerosene and he let it on fire. And he said, this is the only thing. And he goes, we had to stand right there while this thing was like making weird noises. And the flames would turn green and blue. He's like, I've never seen anything like it. He goes, and my uncle made us watch. He said, this is what you got to do. And he was like holding the rag on his face and he was burning it. And the fire kept going on. They kept having to throw fire back on it. This was in Mexico. Mexico. Made in Mexico. Yeah. They make 3 things down in Mexico. Goat piss beer, Jaritas, and Araña Bigfoot. And some people might say mierda de toro. That means bullshit in Spanish. No. This was no bullshit. This is real. Excuse my cussing. It's my vice. I have a problem with that. I try to not cuss. But it's just, I get aggravated. When somebody's animals are being killed, and I know damn well that these things do it. It happens here in Texas. It happens in Louisiana. It happens in Arkansas. It happens in New Mexico. It happens in Argentina. It happens in Europe. And it happens in Asia. It happens in Australia. It happens all over the place. It happens in Canada. Don't sit here and tell me that these people aren't seeing what they saw. Jose Alvarez says, any stories of Big Bend National Park? Yeah, we were talking about them earlier. These creatures, they were rampaging at one time back in the 70s, and that was when all this stuff was happening at Big Bend National Park. Like this guy just asked about Big Bend National Park, and they were hunting them down, looking for them. This guy ended up, what's his name? Manuel. He ended up with, or Manuel. He ended up with a female cougar. He caught her in a trap. He was very wild. When I went there to his little, the whole area, people knew that he had like a menagerie of animals. You couldn't pet her, but he rescued her because there was a big male that had been killed, and he claims that it was this Bigfoot type creature. But yeah, these monkeys. Now, the monkeys that I saw when I was a kid, one of them was gone, and there was another one that was there. The male had died. Or I'm sorry, the female had died, but there was another one that was there. There was another female and another male, and they were the descendants of those other ones. And the male that was older, he was on his last leg. But it's weird. It's weird that I remember going there, and this guy was like saying, "Hey, I've heard you talk about Marfa, and I got a story and whatever." And yeah, I wonder. What kind of things my grandfather knew, because he talked to this man like all the time. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather he had all this knowledge and he didn't give a shit. I asked my grandfather before about teaching people things, and he goes, they don't do no good teach people shit. They're not going to learn it. They're not going to retain it. They're not going to use it. What is it?
Somebody here?
Did you hear?
Yeah, I heard something. What was it?
Sounded like someone's at the door.
Yeah.
Like the keys moved or something.
Yeah.
I'm like right in the camera face. But he told me he was not interested in teaching people shit. He's like, teach them enough to get by, and that's it. They're not gonna. He's like, you're wasting your time trying to teach people. That's what he told me. When I was 17, I told him I was going to go to college, and he said, "For what?" And I told him, I said, "Well, I want to be a history teacher." He goes, "They ain't going to learn shit." He was very adamant about some other things that are very controversial, and I'm not going to repeat them because he was in World War II and he didn't believe it.
Yeah.
So he was like, that didn't happen. That ain't the way it happened. He was with Patton's army. He would know.
Mm-hmm.
Patton was that way too. And he goes, they killed my boss. He always called Patton his boss. He's like, they killed my boss because he uncovered the truth. And he always told me, the people that run this world, this is what he told me. This was 2 weeks before he died. He looked me in my eye and he was tears in his eyes. He was finally crying in front of me, at that point. And he told me, he said, this whole world is evil. He'd been reading the Bible. He had the Bible there, and he says, the good book says Satan runs this world. You believe that? And I said, I guess if Jesus said it. He goes, he did. He said, and they're going to kill you, Josh boy. As soon as I'm sitting here, and he cried. And I was just like, why is he saying this? Why does he say the things he says? Why did he do the things he did? I don't know. I've told you this before, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Like the things that he told me. He said, you like to find things and talk about it. He's like, that thing you saw when you were 15, he goes, don't talk about that. He told me that. He goes, don't talk about it. He's like, I've seen what they're going to do to you. They're going to kill you. And then he told me about my life, and he predicted. He said, you're going to have a very hard life. You're going to fight and fight and fight. And I said, how do you know all of this? I was like, why do you say these things? I called him Pawpaw. I said, Pawpaw, why do you say all this stuff? Come on, let's go eat lunch. He said, I'm not hungry today. That was 2 weeks. That was 2 weeks before he died. And he told me, he says, they're going to chew you up and spit you out. And he goes, you're tough, you're hard. He goes, but I know what's going to happen. You're going to fight the whole world, and the whole world's going to pile up on you, and then they're just going to kill you. They're going to kill you. And I was like, why would you say that? How do you know this? And he says, because you got a lot of me in you. He says, you're me. You're my blood. You're just like me. He's like, your dad knew better. He's quiet about what he saw. He's like, and I only told a few people things that ever happened to me. He said, but I know you. And he told me, he says, I love you, and you got a good heart. You care about my soul, and that's more than most people. He's like, every time you're here, you're trying to get me to pray with you, and I'm not going to do it. He goes, I pray on my own. And I said, why is that? He goes, I don't want to say my sins out loud, and you judge me a certain way, look at me a certain way. He said, I've done a lot of bad things. And he wasn't a pervert, I know that, but he was very violent. Very violent. My grandmother believed that he had unalived people, not as a serial killer type person, but like when he came back from overseas, he didn't really have a profession. So he would go to the Northeast and hung out with some Italians. So do the math. I mean, he was good at what he did. And so he was like, then he got into trucking.
Just someone from out of town, no connections there.
Mm-hmm. And then he would come back with money. And my grandmother was like, this is before. And so I think he would wonder often. He would be sitting there. I'd come up and I'd stand there by the door and I'd watch him, and he'd stare. I'd just be staring out the window at the rest home. And it was a veterans rest home, And I'd knock. And he'd turn around, he'd see me, and he'd roll his wheelchair up there, and give me a big old hug. And I'd have to go through and take all of his candy away or whatever he had smuggled in, like, what is this? Chocolate? You can't have this. And he's like, you're worse than your daddy. I'm like, I'm doing what I got to do. And I go see him every Wednesday. And, 2 weeks after he told me all that, him crying made me cry, and I went to see him the next week. Everything was fine. The next week, and I didn't go. And I think he was, he always got like to go eat with me, and he got into some food he wasn't really supposed to eat, and he went to a coma and he passed away. And I was so racked with guilt I couldn't even go to his funeral. Oh boy. I spent years apologizing to everybody in the family about that because I just couldn't. I had a situation going on too, because at that time I was temporarily homeless and living in my car, and I should have just gone.
That's an earthly ceremony, though. It's not something that's like spiritually necessary, really. And everybody processes the grief in their own way. Like nobody has a right to judge someone for how they process something like that. Like I don't process grief immediately either. And part of me sometimes feels bad for not being outwardly expressive the same way I see other people around me at funerals but it doesn't hit me then. It hits me in private and I express it privately. And I don't try to be that way. It's just how it is. But the more I think about it, the more I realize I don't have anything to apologize for. I don't have anything to feel bad for. I feel the same way everyone else does, but I feel it differently, and they don't have the right to judge me, and nor do I have the right to judge them for just absolutely wailing at funerals. That's how they process that.
Yeah,
And so for some people it's too much to even go, and I mean I don't want to disclose who it is because it's their business, but I know someone who recently they chose not to go to a funeral, and that's their decision. That's their business, and I respect them for it, and I don't judge them at all.
You can't.
I lost it at my grandmother's funeral, and I cussed out a man. There was an undertaker that was sitting there talking while we were at the burial site, and the preacher was, and when everybody walked off, I said, "Do you need to shut your mouth, dude? You're over here talking to this other guy. I don't know who the other guy was. You're just talking away, leaning on a shovel. What are you doing? Some old goofy hillbilly redneck goofball, just, have my family's goofball redneck hill, whatever, but I don't know this piece of shit." And I was so pissed. I was like, dude, I love that woman. It might just be another person that you throw dirt on for you, but it was just the most special person in my life. And it was hard. And I wanted to smack that little skinny, toothless shit. Goofy ass. Some of them people, man, they need to just stay up in them hills, man. Come down with 3 eyes and no teeth and 2 noses. Backwoods inbred hillbilly. And just because I don't talk like this no more, don't mean that I'm not from those same hills, but I went and I learned and I educated myself and I refined myself. And by the grace of God, I don't walk around with a wife beater on and drinking bourbon. And to the people who want to judge me and say things about me not being from the country, let me tell you something. Okay? We have a ranch out in the country. I'm not city slicker boy. Now, maybe to these people who live, eat, drink, sleep, and breathe horse manure or cow shit, I used to shovel it for a living. And maybe I'm not you because I learned how to live in the city. But the advantage I have over you son of a bitches, is that I can go out into the country and live the rest of my life and be perfectly fine living off the land. And I can live in the city and deal with the scum of the earth and put them in their place and do everything I got to do. And I can defend myself and my family, and I can live in very bad places, and I'll survive and I'll thrive. Not you. You come to the city and you're ooh, ah, and scared and whatever. Your eyes are big as saucers. And the city people go out to the country and they hear a noise and they ooh, ah, and their eyes are big as saucers. Not me, because I've conquered both. See, men like us, we conquer and we laugh at the elements. The deserts of Africa to the Russian steppes, you battle through the heat and the cold. And every scar tells a story. All I need is Jesus. These people, they go out to the woods, they're camping.
Mhm.
I call it glamping. They go out there and they take an RV and they have.
Mhm.
What are you doing? You're just driving a vehicle and you live in it, and you're out there but you're in the whatever. And you're doing boots on the ground because you walk around and take some screenshots of a fucking lake. So go jump in it. Stupid people. I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I've just seen some stupid shit from these people for the last several years, claiming that they're doing this or that. Or somebody's like, I grew up in the hood. I'm a badass dude. I can do this. I can do that. Really? Put them out in the country and they'll shit on a tree. They're so scared. The thing is for years I avoided certain areas because I knew what was there. But I conquered my fear. And even through all the horrific stories that I've heard. And last night, Anthony, you, me, and Tony, we heard a horrific story.
Yeah.
And that one, she talked so well. I was like, we have to she has to tell it. She told it so well. She knew exactly what she had to say. I didn't have to lead her. I didn't have to say anything. And it was horrific. And these things do kill, believe me. And it was rough listening to that story.
That episode's definitely not for the faint of heart.
It is going to be rough talking about it. And she's told it before on another show, but not like this. Because she did a follow-up with us on this subsequent stuff. And we give her some insight into this. Something that these other hosts don't do. I'm not tooting my horn. I'm telling you the truth. But I'm telling you this right now, 100%. My grandpa knew me. He was from the sticks, from the hills, nothing but a hillbilly who lived by his own law. But he could thrive in town. He'd been to some of the biggest cities. Still to this day, I've never been to the Northeast. I've been to other continents. And I haven't been to the Northeast. He used to hang out up there with gangsters. And my grandpa never saw himself as one of them. He always knew that he was not them. He would say it too. He's like, I'm not one of them guineas. He's like, are they your friends? He goes, nope. Business transactions. And I never asked him what they were. I don't think I wanted to know. And so my grandpa was just a very real, pragmatic person, but he knew that this stuff existed. And he was always asking me why I was so interested in it, because at a young age, I was interested in it. But I wasn't interested in it being any more than just fictional stories that were just interesting, intriguing. And I kind of grew out of it. And then I didn't believe none of it. And then when I was 15, and me and my grandpa talked at length about it. When I told him, he just sat there and he listened. He shook his head and he said, yeah. He said, don't go around telling people that. And he saw the future of my life. What was that? You're sitting there moving your arm. I thought you were making noises with your armpit. But he saw the future. He saw my life and how it played out. And he says, you're going to do what you're going to do. I know you. I know you're stubborn. You're going to do what you're going to do. And your life's going to be hard and you're going to suffer for it. He told me that. And I did. And my life was hard. And I did suffer for it. And now here I am talking about all this shit, all this weird stuff. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I don't tell anybody that they're wrong or they didn't see what they saw. They know what they saw. And I appreciate them telling me what they saw. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a good show, another good show where I got to talk and tell people what's what. And remember, these things aren't your friends. And if you're going to err on the side of caution, which I think everybody should, just assume that they will unalive you. And when you pass from whatever it is that takes you, they're going to make up a lie about what killed you.
Wild animal attack.
You will be pack of dogs.
You have been killed by a pack of dogs, a bear, a gorilla, whatever it is, an escaped something,
reindeer.
Or you were just killed by a rabid, savage human that killed you.
The worst is a deer.
And no one will ever know what really happened, because that's how they operate. And the powers that be, they don't give a shit. So the next time that somebody says, hey, these things took my cows, I can tell you 100%. I know 2 ranchers not even 4 miles from my ranch who've told me. In fact, I got to go talk to one of them on, what is tomorrow? Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a week from tomorrow. I got to talk to one of them. So thank you, folks, for tuning in. Thank you for listening to me. We'll do the giveaway. Anybody's name is in green. If you have your name in green, we've already chosen one. That was Lori Gibbs. Who's next? Tracker 17 says, I've been telling people, oh, yeah, we are absolutely dangerous. These people that go up and into the blue mountains up there, blue hills, whatever, and they're like, oh, yeah, the Yowie. Yeah, those Yowie up there. Yeah, and we're up there and we're eating Big Macs together. And we're good friends, eh? Right.
It's your opportunity to get in green, guys, so you can win something.
You're not going to believe this, Alice, but we had something. My wife and I have been working on a book together, and everything got erased last night on one of them. 10,000 words. Yeah. So, yeah, I know. Hey, Wolf, I've been going to send you a story about a troll, but weirdly enough, the papers I wrote it down on shortly disappeared. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because they don't want you to know what the hell is going on, because these things are evil. So if your name is in green, and John says, got my hoodie. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, welcome. Now, they've been making up rumors that we are not actually sending out things to people, that these people that post the pictures in the group, that they are people that work for us.
Yes. Welcome to PRT Core.
So we buy all this merchandise and then pay people to wear it, and nobody actually gets it.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
That's how we roll. We just want people,
and then we just take it back from the models that we pay to wear it,
Oh,
and
you
just
definitely.
stick it in a box.
we don't
That's
even
just
see the
storage.
models. I mean, we haven't,
No, they just work for us.
they just work for us. We pay our employees.
All
And not
over the
one of them
world.
has ever just said, hey, people get mad and get just grumble. We had a guy quit the other day. He was mad at me. He says, I'm done with you because I wouldn't give him 6 days a week. I can't give you 6 days a week when we don't have enough hours to go around. It's as simple as that. So I can't do it. I have other people that
Selfish
need,
worker.
yeah, I have other people that need. He was a good worker, but I
Yeah,
have
he was a
people
good-
that need
great
to
worker.
work, and you're not being cooperative. Then whatever, it's a disgruntled person. Wouldn't they go and they'd say, "Hey, man, this guy made me wear the shirt or whatever." You make them do. Nobody's gonna keep secrets like that. Give me a break, dude. People are so ridiculous.
And so the first person who spoke up about the giveaway was someone who I don't think we picked before. Jeremy Kimbrough.
Jeremy Kimbrough, has he won before?
I don't recognize his name.
Jeremy, just tell us if you've won or not. If you haven't, then you win. And even if you have, it depends on how long ago. And if there's other people that don't speak up, then you'll win. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay, Sun and Moon says, I'm curious if you have any stories from massage therapists. As a massage therapist, I've wondered, I've come across. Yes. Yes, I'm glad. Dude, text me that.
Okay.
Because we have a file that we started. Okay, we used to go to this massage place called Massage. Should I say the name? Probably not.
Yeah.
The Massage something, but it's a big chain, right? And I used to go, and I got to be good friends with some of these therapists. And there was an Asian lady who gave me the kitsune. She hooked me up with the people that gave me the story about the kitsune. And then there was another guy who was a massage therapist. And here's the interesting thing: he was blind. Yeah, he was legally blind. And he could feel like, and hear very well. His other sensors become more acute, And he told us something weird happened to him there. Like that ridge on the guy's back, like from the reptilian thing. It may or may not have been a reptilian that happened. Yeah. And you guys already figured it out. Yeah. But anyways, yes. So through them, we've met through, I want to say 1, 2, and then the lady that worked out at our gym.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. She was tall, big old tall girl. She was 6 foot. She was a 6 foot tall woman. She was like, she used to wrestle and stuff, dude.
Yeah, you forget being how big we are, that like how tall actual normal people are.
Yeah.
Because we're all big, tall dudes and we see each other all the damn
Well,
time.
you're not big. You're just tall.
We're just tall.
You got broad shoulders. You just got to fill out, but you're finally lifting again. So, but yeah, dude. And so Sun and the Moon, yes, we have a file now with probably at least half a dozen creepy encounters. One is it's still around. When Bettina and Maddie came to visit, we took them to that particular place, and the ladies there swore up and down that there was a ghost in that building. I'm not going to say where it's at, but because I don't have permission to do that. But the manager took me to the back and said, "Go walk back to the end of the hallway." And so I was like, "Okay." So I'm like, "Oh, brother, ooh." Ooh, what's that, brother? Ooh. Yeah, I was like, why? And she was like, yep, right back there. That room was so bad. There was something just back there like a spider just waiting. And I went back to her and I said, man, you got some demon or something. It didn't feel like it felt like demonic.
Yeah.
And she said that the therapist hated being in that room that was adjacent to it, because they used it like the storage. They quit using it as break room because it was too creepy. Nobody wanted to be there. So they used it as storage. I'm interested to know what was there before, possibly, But this wasn't that long ago, maybe a year and a half, whatever. And that whatever was there, and they would hear it like bang on the wall with clients while they were giving them massages, and they would be like, "What the heck is that?" And the client would get up and be like, "What? I came here to get a massage, not get attacked by a ghost." You know what I mean? So, yeah, weird, man, weird. This guy says the morgue. We have a friend who was a DJ, real good friend of ours, and he was a part-time mortician. He worked for a mortician and made really good money. I said, "Why do you do it?" He's not like a weirdo, that I ever saw. He goes, "Dude, I just needed money, man. It was good money and, paid very well." He goes, "Believe me, I'd much rather just be a DJ, but this doesn't pay all the bills. So I had to get a job doing this." And some weird stuff happened. Yeah. You get some in doppelganger stories. Andres says, "Oh yeah, that'll be in the book too, when it comes out, that my brother King Dibbles up here is writing. My book, with his help, but we're both writing it together, and we've just been going back and forth about and interviewing different people who lived in that house. So yeah, weird stuff, man. Creepy stuff, dude. And we talk about it all. We talk about alien abduction, ghosts, Bigfoot, Dogman, whatever you name it. Alternate realities. I have a heck of an alternate reality story. Did you text me that one to talk about that one?
Alternate reality story?
Yeah, it is the one from the gym.
Let me see.
Larry. The guy's name is Larry. It was Larry and Trey. Just say Larry and Trey. They have a crazy story that they gave us. I know you remember it. Just text it to me and say to tell that story. It happened at Big Tex at the gym. So somebody says I like to lurk in the creepy chat. I used to lurk around in all these different groups and hit people up for their stories, man. And yeah, there's some weird stuff out there, folks. Weird stuff, man. Don't let these people convince you that any of these demons are friends, because they're not. They're not your friends. All right, guys, I'll let you go. So who won? Did we pick the winner?
Yeah, it was
Lori Gibbs and
Jimmy something, Kimbrough, and Jeremy Kimbrough.
Jimmy 2 times.
Yeah,
Jimmy
Gotta get the
Johnson.
papers. Get the papers.
Jimmy K. It was Jimmy K.
All right. So thank you, guys. Thank you for everybody donated and helped out with the show. We greatly appreciate that. And we love you. We'll see you again on Friday. We have a guest. Get this. On Friday, this guy was a film director. Knows some people in Hollywood and stuff, and had some it's just crazy. Things aren't always the way they seem. Let's put it that way. And he's going to talk about some stuff that happened to him on the making of a film. It's going to be on Friday. It should be a really good show. And then don't forget Sunday, we'll be back and we'll be talking about all this stuff. And yeah, we'll see you guys. Good night.